Regular meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Director Hayes, would you please read our mission and vision statements?
I will be happy to do so. Our mission statement: the Davenport Community School District is dedicated to growing excellence in academics, the arts, and athletics for every child by ensuring the highest quality education in an environment shaped by our diverse community, preparing our students to be lifelong learners and productive citizens. Vision statement: education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you, Director Hayes. Director Klein Jerome, would you please read our guiding principles?
Opportunity. We provide abundant opportunities to empower students to reach their full potential academically, creatively, and socially. Collaboration. We foster an environment that allows students, families, and community stakeholders to come together for the betterment of our students' education and future. Transparency. We share relevant and important information with our students, families, and the community to maintain open and productive communication.
Thank you, Director Klein Jerome. Superintendent Schneckhoff, would you please read the goal tie-ins?
Goal number 4, foster the innovative use of finances, facilities, and staff.
Thank you. All right. We'll move on to the public hearing. I will now conduct a public hearing for the approval of the 95% plans and specifications for the Central High School cafeteria roofing improvements. Notice of the hearing was published in the Quad City Times on February 2nd, 2024. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone or call 1-312-626-6799 and enter meeting ID 982-3151-3737 and passcode 316867. State your name and address for the record. Are they walking to the mic? Okay, they're looking for a seat.
That's your future superintendent right there.
All right. Mr. Todd. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Director Klein Jerome.
I move the board approve the plans and specifications for the Central High School cafe roofing improvements as shown in the 95% plans and specifications.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motions have been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. It will be a roll call vote. Director Klein Jerome.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Barnes.
Yes.
Director Postian.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. All right, there are no recognitions or presentations tonight, and it looks like we have no student board members to do reports either. Are there any board reports? Director Postian?
Last Thursday, I was able to attend the Davenport Army ROTC promotion ceremony that recognized 29 cadets. I'd like to congratulate those cadets and admire those students for participating in that program and getting involved in that organization. Also on Friday, I was able to visit Wilson Elementary School. I'd like to thank Principal Larson for spending some time with me, and also teachers Timpson, Gassman, Tilton, Houston, Vanderstrom, and Lindell. I want to thank them for their patience and their energy in the classroom.
Are there any other board reports? Director Klein Jerome.
I attended along with President Gosa, I'm going to get this name wrong, the Unified Banner presentation at West High, as well as a lot of media coverage of it, and it was an excellent presentation, and students' participation was very good.
Any other board reports? All right. Like Director Klein Jerome said, we attended the Unified Champions event. It was an awesome event. I'm glad of the media coverage on that, and I also was at the JROTC promotion ceremony with Director Pashin. Again, another great event that our students are getting active and involved in. Seeing no other board reports, I'll move on to communications, and it looks like we have no open forum request. Perfect, I don't have to read that tonight. May I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board accept the consent agenda as written.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. Superintendent report.
Thank you. I have a kind of a unique report today, and I'm glad to see my man is here in the audience today. But I had a request to go meet a student at Garfield who is very interested in being the superintendent for Davenport Community School District. Taj, raise your hand, please. Taj Lee is a 6th grader at Garfield, and we had probably a half-hour conversation about what it takes to become a superintendent, and then what are the roles of the superintendent. And it was one of the best conversations I've had all year, to be honest with you. And I wanted my sole superintendent's report to be around this, because this young man, first of all, so articulate, intelligent, bright, smart. You know, the future's going to be okay. Before we left, he calculated. He's like, "So when do you plan on retiring?" And then we were adding up. So he would be out of college by then, and he would have his teaching and on his way to his master's degree at that point. So, but it was really neat to see and hear from him. He's really passionate about being a superintendent. And, you know, we got a chance to talk about the long-range facility plan. We got a chance to talk about budgets and things like that. And then just the path of becoming a superintendent. We started off with, first off, you got to be the best teacher that you can be. Then you have to be the best administrator, whatever pathway you have to be. And it comes with a couple of master's degrees and potentially a doctorate degree. And none of that deterred Mr. Taj. So I wanted that. I'm so glad you're here. Would you like to come up to the podium and say anything? There's a podium right up here. You could be a part of my superintendent's report right up here. Yes, sir. Just press the button. When it turns green, you're ready to talk.
It's on.
Yes, sir.
Perfect. I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you for clapping for me. And my future to be superintendent will be thank you, and thank you, Mr. Schneckloff. But I also like to say, if anybody I'm from Garfield Elementary. If I'd like to talk to the whole district, not the whole district, but it'd be fine to talk to some of you, like you, Mr. Gosa, you, Mr. Poston. You have a stepdaughter that I know that worked at Washington. And I liked her. She was one of my favorite teachers, Miss Potts.
Well, thank you for coming here tonight. I do have a plan to get Mr. Goza on your schedule so you can hear about school boards. He's already agreed that he's going to do that. So we're going to come over and have lunch with you sometime at Garfield. And anything that you need on your journey to become a superintendent, this group of human beings here will make sure that you get a chance to do that. So thank you so much for coming here tonight. And thanks for taking the courage to come up here and speak at the podium.
And also thank you, Miss Evans.
Yes. Right. That concludes my superintendent's report. I will have to say that I did skip out of Garfield that day. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We will move on to committee reports. Breaking Barriers Committee.
I'm going to defer that to Superintendent Snackloff.
We are working on putting together the membership of that committee right now.
Thank you. Legislative Advocacy, myself and Director Poston and Superintendent Schneckloff, I believe along with Sarah Otter, going to Des Moines tomorrow for the ISB Day on the Hill to advocate to legislators for public education. LZAC.
We'll be meeting on February 20th.
Thank you. Long Range Facilities Planning.
We met Friday. We reviewed the turf projects at the high schools and at Brady Street Stadium. We also reviewed some of the preliminary plans at Sudlow that are taking shape with the new floor plans and that sort of thing. And I believe we can probably anticipate a presentation to the board in the not too distant future. We also looked at some of the preliminary staff-generated ideas for SMART, and they operated in isolation, Sudlow and SMART, when they were developing. Yet there's a symbiotic similarity to the two. It's like no matter how many different groups you have deciding what should a middle school physically look like, it's like, well, there's only one answer, no matter who you are. So anyway, we're looking forward to some work on that.
Policy Committee.
We met last week, working our way through the policies that need to be reviewed. We have changed everything that needed to be changed, and so now we're in a 5-year cycle of review.
Thank you. Finance Committee.
We met last Thursday, and Kevin's going to present on the key measures and monthly fund report.
Okay, well, it's kind of next on the agenda. So we're going to start with the monthly fund report. There's not a whole lot on this. It's pretty vanilla right now. You can see the little bit of bump in the ESSER revenue for the year to date compared to the prior year and prior. And that's why our balance at the bottom of that screen is bumped up a little bit that I highlighted there. The focus is going to be more on, you can see what's happening with our sales tax and on the next page with our PEPAL funds. I keep reminding people that we're going to be looking at those a lot closer as we go forward. We're starting to spend those dollars as the reports that you've seen of some of the expenditures and facilities planning. There is an other fund 30 there that's in the red, but that's because the action you're taking tonight and next month, the dollars that will be purchasing bonds, selling bonds, that's where those funds will go. And the other thing on the debt service, that's the next agenda item. That is the final payment of the debt service. It's coming off, so of the old debt. So that's about it on the monthly fund report for December.
Director Beck.
Not necessarily related to this one exactly, but to our projections for the rest of the year. How does not knowing the SSA amount affect your ability to budget and correct projections?
That'll be going forward as we get into the budgeting. That won't affect
It
FY24.
won't affect this year, right?
FY25 it will.
Okay.
So when we start taking a deeper dive into FY25 budget, I'm working on the estimates now, but that will play an effect on
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the report, Kevin.
Yep.
We will move on.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. The second report is our key measures report. It's pretty much the same as what it was last month. We're running in that 12% range for our UAB. It's exactly where we want to be. I think the important thing is we've been running in the low 90% of our how much of our budget that we're estimated to spend, and we're running in the high 97s now, which is exactly where we want 90s now, which is exactly where we want to be. We want to be close to that 100%. because our authority is right where we need it to be. We don't need to be holding that back as much from year to year. In the solvency, I've been saying our solvency is rising, and we'll be taking care of that budgetarily in FY25. But it's starting to level out as well, and 20% is the max that we're allowed to carry over. So we've hit that max, but it's going to start to come back down to a little bit lower, but we'll be okay solvency wise. And then on page 2 of that, very quickly, with all the things that are happening and all the changes that are happening, not knowing a year ago where we were going to be this year, we will have an amendment for FY24. That'll be coming right along with the FY25 budget. So I'll talk about that as we get closer and I can get better estimates.
Thank you, Kevin. We will move on to items requiring action. May I have a motion on subject 11.01, resolution authorizing the redemption of outstanding school infrastructure sales, service, and use tax revenue bonds series 2025 and directing notice to be given.
Mr. President,
Director Poston.
move the board adopt a resolution authorizing the redemption of outstanding school infrastructure sales, service, and use tax revenue bonds of the Davenport Community School District, State of Iowa, dated May 12, 2015, and directing the notice to be given.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Director Beck.
I think I know the answer to this, but normally this is, we make our payments yearly, correct?
We make annual principal payments, semi-annual interest payments.
Okay, so we'd be paying the annual payment a little early and the second interest payment
Correct.
early.
10 weeks.
Okay.
All right, seeing and hearing no other questions, I will call for the vote. This will be a roll call vote. Director Poston,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Beck,
Yes.
Director Barnes,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome.
Yes.
My vote is yes, motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.02, resolution fixing the date of sale, approving electronic bidding procedures, and approving official statement, 80 million school infrastructure bonds.
Mr. President,
Director Poston.
move the board adopt a resolution fixing the date of the sale of approximately $80 million school infrastructure sales, services, and use tax revenue bonds, Series 2024, approving electronic bidding procedures and approving the official statement.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. It'll be a roll call vote. Director Poston,
Yes.
Director Hayes,
Yes.
Director Potts,
Yes.
Director Barnes,
Yes.
Director Klein Jerome,
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
My vote is yes, motion carries. May I have a motion on subject 11.03, Area Education Agency Resolution?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move to approve the Area Education Agency resolution as presented.
You have to read.
Oh, the whole thing. I'm sorry. Okay, whereas the Area Education Agency, AA, throughout the state of Iowa have providing outstanding services that meet the needs of Iowa students, whereas the Davenport Community School District believes the current AEA structure should be maintained and enhanced. If the structure is altered in any manner, the comprehensive study should be conducted prior to making any changes. That study should include educators, parents, and school board members as full voting participants. Those educators, parents, and school board members should be appointed by the local school district and the AEA. Now therefore be it resolved by the board, pass and approve the 12th day of February 2024, Daniel goes to president. Brenda T., board secretary.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Director Potts.
Yeah, I'm curious. Our usual standard operating procedure is an item appears as a discussion item prior to then appearing as an action item on our agendas. This, I don't believe, appeared as a discussion item at our last regular board meeting. So I'm just wondering why it is here now when we haven't had that other part of our procedure conform to.
So to answer your question on that, a lot of our agendas have been pretty packed to squeeze it in because we've been trying to keep the meetings a little bit quicker moving. And this stuff with the AEA and the legislators kind of came about pretty quickly. So it's something that other districts have done across the state. So we were just trying to get something out in front of you all ahead of time, whereas it is a motion and it can be voted down or tabled or however.
Okay, I just thought, the resolution on this in the legislature has been canned. It's not moving out of committee.
It's still up for in the Senate.
Yeah, but it's not going to get anywhere in the House. They've already said it's not going to move. So, and it seems to me we have had an on and off again relationship with the AEA. In my time, I can remember times when we had great service from the AEA, and I can remember times when we had poor service in special ed from the AEA. So I think it would behoove us all if we did review the functions and finances and authorization of the AEA, because our flow through money is what? Do we know off the ballpark? $8 million. I think I'm not sure we get $8 million worth out of our investment. That's not to say I don't agree with portions of this. I do. But I just think we should follow our standard operating procedures, and I think we should have a conversation about this before it's an action item.
You want to table it? Are you saying table it?
I would be happy to table it, and then we can have a full discussion on this at our next meeting. We can get facts, figures, and maybe have somebody from the AEA who come and plead their case. So I move we table this.
Can we
Yeah, well, go ahead.
do
Whatever you want to do.
discussion and
Whatever you want to do. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Director Beck?
I actually thought resolutions fell into a different category, but we don't do that very often, so I don't know. I don't remember having resolutions typically up for discussion before we vote on them necessarily. But I guess my question is if we wanted to tweak the language of the resolution, as Director Potts said, some parts he agrees with, some parts he doesn't. Would we have to table it first and come back to it another time, or can he make a suggestion now, or how does that work? I understand that usually these are presented because there's some amount of urgency with the issue. So I'm just trying to figure out how we can resolve it quickly.
So the motion can always be amended, as with anything that we do. So, I mean, if there is something like that, I mean, that's why we're in the discussion process of it. So if there's something like that. Is there any other discussion or input on this? Make a motion.
I just move that we postpone the vote. That we postpone the motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right. Motion's been moved and seconded to postpone till a later time. I'm assuming that's what you meant, Director Potts. Is there any discussion on that? Director Pasha?
Just to back up a little bit, so I agree wholeheartedly with Director Potts, but in the back of my mind, I also think about what the AEA did for us as we got through our issues with the state, and so we did get a lot of help there. But I do think that a review is necessary, and but I don't feel that eliminating the AEAs is, the way to go.
Thank you, Director Pasha. Is there any other discussion on the motion to postpone? All right, seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Dan, did you catch my opposition vote? I think it was like 6-1. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't hear you at all. You got that recorded, Brenda? Okay. All right. May I have a motion on subject 11.04, policies for approval?
Mr. President,
Director Klein Jerome.
I move the board approve the following policies: 200.01, 200.03, 200.04, 201, 202.01, 202.02, 202.03, 202.04, 203, 203.06, 204, 204.01, 205, 206.01, 206.02, 207, 208.01, 209.02, 209.03, 209.04, and 209.05. 405.02, 605.06, and 605.08.
Second.
What, 206.02? I just read them through time.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries. All right, we will move on to discussion items. Up first, we have 12.01 CKLA Amplify Curriculum. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you. Diane has a team of people here today to kind of talk to us where we are in our adoption phase and what our next steps are. So I'll turn it over to our team. Diane, if you wouldn't mind introducing who's here tonight, I would appreciate it.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. And we are beyond excited to be at this point and to be in front of the board to share our journey with CKLA Amplify and HMH into literature. We have gone through a very rigorous process to review what is available for high quality instructional materials. And we, through this process, have gone through 6 different phases to be able to get to where we are this evening, to be able to present to you the information for both elementary and then the secondary literature or literacy programs. And with me this evening, we have Bonnie Acey, who has been our program director and leader with this work and has done an absolutely outstanding job to make sure that we stayed with fidelity throughout the entire process. And taking the lead at the elementary is Jen Saxon, who has been with us and is an absolute expert, not only in literacy, but professional learning and very detail-oriented. So she has been able to really bring such a strong experience with her in being able to do the field test and to be able to support the teachers in the buildings and the administration. And we also have Kim Woods, who has taken the lead and has done an absolutely outstanding job at the secondary level for our 6th through 11th grade materials into literature. And again, really exploring not only the the materials and resources, but the scope and sequence that needs to happen so that we can bring that vertical articulation that needs to occur. So I could not be any more proud than I am of this team and the leadership that they have brought. And also the support that has been in the buildings. And it has been a journey for sure. And the teachers have been absolutely, again, incredible through the field test experience. We went through the entire process to narrow down. And again, I think earlier I shared that at the elementary we had over 100 different options, and you have to take all of those and get them all the way down to the ones that we're looking at. And then once we went through that entire process, really landed on one that really surfaced to the top, and that's why we did the field test. And so the field test is just for us to work out those issues, to get a group to be able to identify any barriers, and then to be able to be solid as we go into full implementation next year. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Bonnie, and then we'll do a discussion for elementary and secondary.
Perfect, thanks. So yes, like Diane said, we're really excited to be here with you guys tonight to talk about our new K-11 curriculum resources that we've been field testing in a few of our buildings. The outline for tonight, or how we're going to kind of organize our discussion and presentation, is we're going to have a chance to start with Amplify CKLA, and then really share about the why we needed to have this new resource, talk about that process that we went through at the elementary level, and then have a little presentation around what are the critical components within Amplify CKLA. Then we'll shift and invite that shift to our secondary, where we'll have the same types of things and outcomes that we'll go over, but have a chance to look at those HMH into literature curriculum materials. With each, we'll have a chance to talk about the professional development plan that our teachers will engage in, and then we'll end with some question and answers that you may have. We have a great variety of teachers and principals that wanted to come and talk with you tonight, so I'm excited for you to get to hear from them as well. And so we're going to start with Amplify CKLA, and here are just a few pictures of some of our Davenport teachers and students engaging with our new elementary curricular resource. And we want to definitely make sure that we celebrate the partnerships that we've had with our buildings. You can see listed here our full implementation buildings and our 5th grade. We've had pockets of them throughout, so lots of representation here. Along the way, the feedback that these buildings and teachers have provided us has been so valuable to helping us, like Diane said, really make sure that we're ready for full implementation next year across the district. So again, we really value that partnership. And here's just a list of who all of those wonderful people are. This is our adoption team, and Jen's going to talk a little later about what all they engaged in as part of our adoption team. So this is our principals and teachers that were involved in the adoption process. And then the next slide are all of the teachers, all of our field test teachers at our buildings that were listed above that, again, have been very instrumental in providing us feedback. I'm going to turn it over to Jen to keep going.
All right, so when we want to start out, we think about our curriculum adoption process. We want to go through that cycle to evaluate our materials that we have available to us, make sure that we're continuing to provide those high quality instructional materials for our teachers and our students that have evidence base to support them. We also know that our data for K-5 literacy has remained fairly stagnant over the last several years. As you can see here, we talked about that in December as well. And so that indicates that there's a mismatch between the data and what we're seeing and the curriculum that is being provided to our students. And so that tells us that we need to adjust and make a change somewhere. We've also, in addition, been providing our teachers with that LETRS professional development. So all of our elementary teachers, over 570 elementary teachers, are engaging in that LETRS professional development. And with that, then they're learning about science of reading-based instruction and evidence-based instruction. And we've seen a need through that we have resources that also align to that same learning. One of our biggest areas that we've noticed is that language comprehension. We were missing our previous components or our previous materials were not providing the instruction necessary for that whole top upper part of the rope that we see here. So that was something that we wanted to make sure that we align with. We also know that the state of Iowa came out with a list of what they had as endorsed, those content-rich curriculums that would provide the instruction that would match up with this learning as well, Amplify CKLA being one of those. So in our process, they started back in November of last year. And at that time, like Diane had said, we had narrowed down our resources. We also surveyed our teachers to ask them what they thought about their current resources and whether they provided what they needed to reach all students. And you can see in the graph on the left-hand side, we had approximately 70% of our teachers that were either neutral or disagreed with the fact that their materials that they had were providing what they needed to reach all students. On the left-hand side, we can see then, if we dive deeper into that, we ask them to expand upon what would be important in that curricular resource. If we were looking at something new, what would they want to make sure was included? And one of the big things that came out of that was that single program, something that's not pieced together from multiple programs, which is something that we've done in the past. Also, there was a lot of comments in relation to cultural relevance and engaging materials for students and making that connection between reading and writing instruction, as well as providing not just for our students who are below, but also those students who are above grade level as well, and really making sure that we're pushing them with those resources as well. So this, if I continue on our timeline, in May of last year, we ended up selecting to field test Amplify CKLA. From there, then we selected our buildings, and we then engaged in providing professional development to our teachers over the summer. So we gave teachers an opportunity for 10 hours of paid time over the summer last year to be able to learn more about the program, learn about the mindset, and learn about some of the shifts that were going to be needed for them instructionally. Then in August of last year, we had our Amplify consultants here on site, and they provided our teachers with 2 half-day professional development days to learn more about those components and what they were going to be getting into. From there, so from September on, we've had lots of different levels of implementation supports that we've provided along the way. So we have, I joined the weekly CTT meetings, so those teacher team meetings where we are able to gain feedback and also then answer questions, provide supports to teachers along the way. We've had our Amplify consultants come in, they've done walkthroughs and then met with teacher teams in order to provide feedback and then suggestions for next steps as well. Through some of that, we've also had requests for additional learning for principals and coaches. So we had provided a leadership training in December for principals and coaches so that they could learn more about overall what is it they're looking for, what would they see, and how they can help their staff to improve. And then we also provided for our teachers an enhancing planning and practice session, as that planning and preparation for instruction was something they were feeling like they needed more support with. So we've done that as well. So we continue to be responsive in providing those resources and needs for our teachers and our principals as we go along this journey. Through this, we've also done multiple surveys. We've surveyed our teachers. We've done focus groups with our teacher teams to get feedback on what were some positives, what were some things that they were struggling with, as well as then what they felt like would be important next steps. We also surveyed our students, asking them in grades 2 through 5, we asked them, what they thought of the program, what was their experience with that. And so we continue to try to collect feedback along the way so that we can make sure that we are providing necessary supports and planning for future rollout as well. So I'd like to now introduce, we have one of our Amplify consultants here, Megan, and she's here. She's going to talk a little bit about the program components for you because Yep, she's going to stand actually. I'm going to go do that. So she's going to talk about the components, what we've been field testing as our new ELA curricular resource.
I think last time I was in here, you just press the button and see green, then you talk, right? Good evening. My name's Megan. I manage literacy pilots or field experiences for Amplify. And so I've had the pleasure of working with the field experience teachers, leaders, coaches, principals, everyone in between since the beginning of this field experience. And so I'm excited to share, in terms of a comprehensive literacy ecosystem for Davenport, one thing that's, we can backtrack here and understand the role of each component in a literacy ecosystem. So when we think about assessments should obviously measure the critical skills that students need to become proficient readers, but they should also inform how effective our Tier 1 instruction is. It should identify the deliberate practice or personalized practice and differentiation that students are receiving, whether they're with the teacher or without the teacher, not in front of the teacher and maybe outside of the teacher's reach. But also, it should give teachers a way or interventionists a way to really provide targeted instruction and practice that's driven by that data in an intervention group. With Amplify, this is what Davenport's literacy ecosystem will look like. And so FastBridge is the universal screener that is currently in place to identify or assess those literacy, those critical skills that we know students need to become proficient readers. FastBridge will identify how effective CKLA's Tier 1 instruction is at preventing the need for intervention, and that's obviously the goal here. It's going to also place students into Boost Reading, which is the digital supplemental practice program that is aligned to CKLA scope and sequence, and it's going to give your interventionist in the district a way to provide targeted intervention. So in terms of an RTI triangle, this is where Amplify's literacy programs fit into that, with CKLA being that Tier 1 component. Now, it's important to know that everything we do at Amplify has always been really grounded in the research. It's grounded in the science of reading research. This is in our DNA with all of our programs. And to bring it back to basics, we know, thankfully, from many researchers along the way, what a developing brain needs to become a proficient reader. That's starting with these two main components here in this mathematical equation. We know that students have to have word recognition skills. That's like being able to lift words off the page. But they also have to have language comprehension ability, oral language, the ability to make meaning of the text that they're reading. One without the other doesn't result in a proficient reader. So when we talk about Amplify CKLA's program being grounded in that research, that's exactly what the program structure or how the program was developed. Amplify CKLA stands for Core Knowledge Language Arts. This is a comprehensive pre-K through 5th grade program that actually will take that letters training that teachers have invested, that you all have invested in developing your teachers, and give them the high quality instructional materials to transfer theory into practice, right? It's giving every kid the Tier 1 instruction that they deserve here in Davenport. In terms of that reading rope, Jen referenced the reading rope. We can use this as a way to really understand the program structure of Amplify CKLA. So in terms of K-2 students, the way the brain is learning how to read, mapping sounds to letters, receiving explicit systematic instruction, that's actually going to happen in the foundational skills component of Amplify CKLA. One thing that was really exciting during this field experience is your teachers' experience with 95% group. This was that first step forward in making sure that your teachers here in Davenport were initiating or taking that step forward to provide explicit systematic instruction. But what we know from the data is that obviously we need that comprehensive solution that's going to take it a step further with giving teachers grade level text for students to not only receive that explicit instruction, but apply it in connected text, and also take it a step further with providing students with opportunities to write about the text they're reading. That's going to happen in kindergarten through second grade every single day. And students are also going to apply all of the skills that they've learned to be able to lift the words off the page in a decodable text. These are grade level text. One thing that I was really happy to hear Bonnie say is your belief in your MTSS universal belief statements that all students in Davenport can achieve at high levels. And this goes back to ensuring that they have grade level text in hand in every single classroom. So students will have those engaging chapter books where they're going to actually receive explicit instruction in learning how to read and respond to those texts. And kindergarten through second grade students talking about language comprehension development. This is that area that Jen mentioned. You know, we've really identified this as an area of weakness. And this is what students are going to receive instruction in the knowledge strand to ensure that no matter what walk of life, where they come from, what experiences they have, that they're actually going to receive instruction that's exposing them to the world. So that way they can access a wide range of text along the way. That's also going to prepare them and continue to give them grade level instruction with keeping knowledge-rich content at the center in third, fourth, and fifth grade, and making sure that we're using that knowledge-rich content as the vehicle for teaching Iowa State standards, but also for giving kids those opportunities to continue to build depth and breadth of knowledge over time. Third, fourth, and fifth grade students all have had grade level text in hand about those knowledge-rich topics. And if you're wondering, what are these knowledge-rich topics that we're talking about? This is actually CKLA's knowledge sequence. It was intentionally designed to build background knowledge and vocabulary, not just within grade levels, but across grade levels. And so as we look here, you'll see that across the scope and sequence, this is empowering kids to actually learn about historical content, science topics, literary topics, about the world as seen through the eyes of many different groups. So that way, as they approach text throughout life, they have some knowledge and background to make sense of what they're reading and think critically about those texts. Now, in terms of print materials, teachers have had access to all of these print materials as they will continue to, but they've also experienced the digital classroom experience that has given them access to the curriculum digitally through slides, through interactivity, but also given students a way to access the curriculum as well. So this is important, thinking about absent students, right? How do we make sure that they have access to the curriculum, or can kind of, how is it easy for the teacher to utilize these resources to ensure that students are receiving that instruction? That is all part of Amplify CKLA. In terms of the Tier 2 and 3 intervention resource, teachers or interventionists have actually had an experience with M-Class intervention. This takes the data from FastBridge and further analyzes it, and it gives interventionists a 10-day lesson plan cycle after grouping students with like skills deficits and giving interventionists lessons that actually provide explicit instruction and practice to close those skills deficits, going back to making sure that we're progress monitoring students and determining, are they making adequate growth, or is our remediation instruction effective? So that's all built into M-Class intervention. And FastBridge is also placing students into Boost Reading, which is effortless differentiation for teachers in terms of ensuring that all students, above level, on level, below level students have personalized practice and instruction, especially when the teacher is out of reach. So this digital practice program adapts as students play, and also extends the learning, or gives them experiences that look very similar to CKLA's instruction, but in a digital format, but in a way that is just right for them. So as students are playing in Boost Reading, it's giving teachers another data point and also giving them ways to target those gaps or those deficits that the system is picking up on. And kids don't even know that we're gathering this data. This is super fun for them. Now, part of what's been so successful about this field experience is really attributed to the work that the field experience teachers, the coaches in Davenport are phenomenal, the leadership team has been phenomenal. They've been very receptive of the ongoing training and support and have just thirsted for more in terms of thinking big picture next year and preparing for a district-wide implementation. It's because of your educators in your district that makes implementing, with a professional learning plan, a 3-year implementation plan, something that will ensure that Davenport reaches that deep implementation phase to see the results that CKLA's high quality instruction can achieve and see the reading proficiency you're looking for. So Jen will talk a little bit more about that professional learning.
Okay, so talking a little bit about that, then professional development plan, thinking forward to what we need to provide to our teachers. And one thing I did forget to mention, and I'm glad Megan had brought it up, is we also have had ongoing sessions with our coaches to help build that internal capacity. So we are providing supports there as well to make sure that everyone is prepared and has what they need in order to be successful. As part of that professional development plan and in alignment with implementation science, we know that our PD plan is going to be a 3-year plan, so it's not a once and done. And we are going to have those in-person training sessions that would continue, as well as online supports. That's followed up with then coaching and support. We would be assigned a professional development strategist from Amplify CKLA, and they would help to shape our professional development based on what is needed for our teachers. Similar to what we've experienced in our field test, we reach out to them, we look for what our teachers need at that time, and then provide that for them. We'll continue then with some on-site coaching sessions as well, targeted strengthening sessions to help to continue to improve their practice, and then enhancing sessions for principals and coaches to help them be those instructional leaders in the buildings.
So what are our students saying about the program? We were able to survey our students in our field test buildings, and you can see that almost 80% of our students are saying that what they are learning and reading is useful for them to know. And this just supports the diverse and engaging texts that are within the curricular resource. We've learned a lot from our field test buildings, and we know that change is hard. And shifting to the science of reading is not an overnight, here's a new resource. We know it's going to take time and support. We're going to have to engage with our teachers ongoing within that 3-year plan and longer about what that's going to look like to help them be most successful. We know that this is a rigorous curriculum, just like we told you with math. We know our kids can do it. We know they need it. Learning about those instructional shifts, as Megan talked about, are going to be really important to how the science tells us to teach reading. That 3-year plan is going to help ensure that we do that, and we have a summer full of work already to prepare with our implementation. And so with that, we're going to make just a little shift to secondary. And so we will let...
We have to finish the subject we're on, or you're going to get me in trouble.
You in trouble? Oh.
Robert's rules. This is the topic we're on, so can we ask questions on this? And
yes. Can I invite up our elementary field test teachers and principals to be part of any questions that you may have?
absolutely. I was going to suggest that. Should I have them tell us about it or ask questions? Okay. Wow. Right in the middle. Down in front, down in front. Stand on the table.
I'm Mandy Bowman, the principal at Fillmore. Nice to talk to you guys. I'm going to go this way and we'll keep going down.
Jessica Anderson, reading interventionist. Courtney Evans, instructional reading coach. Rachel Albee, first grade.
Now Morris, kindergarten.
And Jen Rickman, kindergarten.
And we did have some other teachers that wanted to join, but with illnesses going around and kids in sports, they're going to have to just send their thoughts and their reactions via a board memo. So they were not able to join tonight.
Before I ask board members for questions, I was going to ask you to introduce yourself and then tell us what you liked about the program, but you kind of jumped the gun on me, and that's cool.
Sorry.
But if each one of you could kind of tell us, and then I'll turn it over to the board for some questions.
I can open just as building principal. One of the things that has really captured my attention is when I'm in for observations in different subject area, whether it's math or whether it's social emotional learning or science, social studies, I hear connections being made to what they're learning in Amplify and the knowledge portion. For example, a teacher was talking about proper nouns the other day in second grade, and the kids went back to their learning from about the Red Soldiers, and they were throwing out character names as proper nouns. So it's pretty amazing to see the connections and the engagement within those portions, and that really excites me for our kids.
Okay. All right. I don't know. There's lots to like, I guess, with the kindergarten portion. I guess one of the things is that we focus on sounds first, and it's super important. And I don't know, I think Na and I both feel like that the kids are more ready to read. They're just like, our data for the winter doesn't look crazy different from years past because we always make so much growth in kindergarten, but there is a trend in moving towards where they're starting to blend their CVC words, so their 3-sound words, and they're starting to move to that a lot sooner. So like half of my class is already blending words, like we do nonsense word fluency, and that hasn't always been the case at this point in the year. So we're halfway through the year and they're already moving forward. They're already more ready to read. So we're like moving slow, but yet it's getting faster and going harder at the same time, but they're doing a good job with it. So
yeah, I just want to say that this is I truly love this program. I really like it a lot.
How long have you been teaching
I've been teaching for
we've been doing
24, 25 years in kindergarten. So I've gone through a lot of curriculums. I love 95%, but this program is so comparable to 95%. And I have seen so much growth and progress in this program. I can't explain how much the kids are, I mean, my kids right now are reading books and they're earlier than normal. And it's amazing. I look forward to teaching it every day. I truly do. The program has so many resources, additional resources that
we don't even get to.
We don't get to, but it's there. It's there if we need it. And like on Fridays when you have fun day, I'm going to pull one of those resources out and do it. And the kids look forward to it. There's a lot of amazing activities in there that applies to what they're learning already. So I really like it a lot in kindergarten level.
Tell them what you teach. You just press that green button.
So I teach first grade, and I apologize. This is the best I've talked in 4 weeks, so I've gone with no voice teaching first grade. But to kind of piggyback on what they were saying is, it is a great program. I'm not going to lie. I was one of those like very skeptical at the beginning, and Megan is amazing. She's like, all right, I'm reading you. What's going on? And she really breaks things down to help you understand and really tied it back to that science of reading and the knowledge that we have as professionals and what we are doing is right. But the excitement that the students have when they finish work, the first thing what they want to do is go grab these books. And those are the ones they're reading. They're not choosing the other ones. They're choosing the books from this, from this series, and they're very engaging. There's the two parts. There's the knowledge, there's the skills. With the skills, I'm like, we need the foundations. I fought for that for years. I want the foundations, but we are getting the foundations. We're getting the foundations at a very high rigor that these kids deserve to be exposed to and are capable of meeting and stepping up to those standards. But we're also getting the foundations of the connection of that writing and that comprehension, which is what we were missing. that's the why we're reading, to understand it. So they're really pulling it and tying it together, and they're having success with it. And then there's the knowledge part, which is really that high rigor of vocabulary and exposing them to a lot of that, just culture and real life stuff. We learned about some early civilizations, and they had such excitement when, we were talking about the Incas and the Aztecs. And then they loved going on their airplanes and filling out their passports, because we were going to different countries and learning about these countries and then reading stories from these countries. So just the richness that the curriculum and the high rigor, and it's just really the excitement of the students. They ask to do, are we doing this today? Are we doing this today? And I'm like, no, that's not on the agenda today, but if we have time, we'll squeeze it in. They love doing the large card where they get in front and they get to make words, and they're asking to do a lot of the activities from this curriculum.
Gosh, this is why I love being at Fillmore. Right here. They are, this is what I get every day. So this is pretty amazing group of educators. And to say I would put every ounce of trust that what they're saying is 100%. So not only do I get to see all grade levels as an instructional coach, what I think the best part for me has been the student excitement. With any implementation of any program, there are some high roads that we have to, go up and then come down. And being there for that with this amazing team has been challenging some days. But where we're at now is we've come to the place where we know now that we can do really hard things and that we're going to get really good results. And they're getting really good results by doing some really hard things, by changing our practice, by changing what we have thought classroom instruction looks like for so long. And it was a hard hill to climb, but we're there, we're at the top, we're seeing the results, we're feeling the results. I get to go into every classroom and see the excitement, not just from the students who are able to read the words off the page, but from the students who are still learning how to read or struggling to learn how to read. Those are the students that are so excited that they are engaged in the content. They can hear the story, learn about concepts and topics that is just beyond their imagination. And I'm getting to see that amazing trend going through kindergarten to first grade, to second grade, to third grade, to see how those topics carry on. I'm so excited for our kindergartners to be able to experience, hopefully, a whole series of that. So yeah, and as a parent of the Davenport school students, 2 now in high school, go West. My son was a struggling reader, and I really feel, if I think about what's best for my kids, this program is what I would, hands down, if I could do it all over again, it would have made me pretty proud for them to go through that.
All right. I agree with Courtney. I also get to see students from everybody's rooms up here, and K5, K6. I just also am a huge 95%. I love 95%, so I was a little worried at first, but I do agree that the kids, when I pick them up, they're just so excited. They want to tell me what they're learning. They go on and on and on, and can't wait to read chapter 4 tomorrow, and can't wait to do their next activities. And these are students, all tier 3, who usually would come to the door like, oh God, I can't. I'm so glad you're here to get me. This was terrible. I want to get out of here. So I just love that they are able to engage in all parts of the reading curriculum. And then I'm also doing M class, and I agree that I find so many things that connect to 95% that at first I was like, oh, I don't want to get rid of this, but it's a lot of multisensory that we learned through OG is also so good. And just a bank of additional resources and activities that could be supplemented with 95% if it was still used or without, just as another resource. So I think it's a great resource to have in the district.
Are you ready for the questions now? Director Beck.
I have several, but I'm going to stick to 2. So I know, you mentioned, I'm sorry, I lost the names in the process, but, reading interventionists, yes. Um, that brought me to my question. So how, thinking of like pre-pandemic levels of reading, how does this compare for students who either lack that kindergarten readiness, didn't go to preschool, or students who have IEPs? Because those are sort of our populations of typically struggling readers at that level.
Mm-hmm.
How does this accommodate those students?
One of the good things about this program is that we use Dibbles to test everybody using their benchmark. So it's similar to FastBridge with the same subtests as K1 do for that. And it shakes the kids out into groups. So the program actually puts them into groups already with light skills. So they choose 2 skills to work on at a time. And then all of the kids in your pool of kids that we tested using Dibbles are broken into like groups that are all working on the same skill. So that is it uses the data to kind of find their lowest deficit skill and place them into a group of like skills. And then it uses progress monitoring to form the next group of lessons that you'll do next. So maybe the kids will switch and some of them are moving on to new skills, whereas some of them might have needed to be held in that group with some different kids who might have those skills to work on now. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, kind of. Go ahead. Oh.
I just want to kind of touch upon that just as the whole class. We were kind of taught, old school way, you do your whole group and then small group, small. Well, all those really are a bunch of tier 2 kind of interventions where this program really allows us to teach that whole group and then we're kind of pushing it out to the kids. And so my 5 students that are very capable of doing it independently can do it independently, and I can still guide the rest of those and really walk them through the parts and the why. And then my other group kind of gets a little bigger. And then, so I've noticed I've had more transitioning over. And I've actually had one of my IEP students who was very rich with his knowledge, leading my discussions in that knowledge part, and has actually graduated off his IEP. So I feel like it did support that in a lot.
Yeah, I was going to add too, because obviously that was, I was hoping they were going to say that, and mainly because that's what I hear from them, right? Is that idea of number one, they're seeing that our IEP kids, because the knowledge strand is about listening comprehension, they're engaging with that conversation, they're feeling successful, and they're using that vocabulary that they're learning in their other settings as well. So that's been really great to see, because that's not something that they've experienced in their educational career. So that's a positive with our IEP students. And a lot of what we've noticed too, even when Rachel was talking about that whole idea of those small groups and that being like multiple tier 2s and very deficit model, in the sense of our instruction was focused more on filling those deficit gaps and not necessarily focused on building up to what was the rigor of the core standards. And so that's something that this is holding all of our students accountable to those Iowa core standards and that level of learning, and then building in those scaffolds and supports to how do we help them to access those grade level standards.
Okay. So and it sounds like from what I hear from like our kindergarten teachers that the kids are actually accelerated in terms of when they're starting to do some of the reading on their own as opposed to in the past. So I'm guessing
we have kindergarten that are in text right now, and generally our student population, we don't see that till later months. So
okay, cool. So that's kind of making up then, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but it seems to me like this might be a good tool for kind of bringing, mitigating some of that learning loss, that although these are students typically who maybe weren't in school during the pandemic, but they still may have some of those gaps. Okay. So my second question is kind of the how do we know that this is going to stick, and when do we know that it's working? How do we make sure it's not the next shiny thing because it is one thing to hear all the people who love it, but we don't get to hear from the people who hate it. And, you know, and we have, everybody has a history, especially in education, but here as well as jumping to the next thing before we know that this is working properly. So what are we doing to make sure that this is a good product, a good tool, and that we're using it the proper way?
That is a great question. And we know more today than we did a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. And one of the pieces that even is leveraging this is implementation science. And that implementation science not only gives us information on what our readiness skills are, but to ensure that we're getting the skills and resources that teachers need for implementation. So we have the coaching that comes in right behind it, in addition to the original professional learning. So when Jen was talking earlier about what that professional learning plan was, it's not just a one and done. It's here's the learning you need, and here's the supports and resources, and here's the coaching that comes behind it. The other piece that we're doing differently is having our coaches come together with our administrators. So our administrators are also going through academy, and I would say that that's feedback that I think we could have done better too, is how do we prepare our administrators that went into the field test with the mental models and the shifts that have to occur with CKLA. We'll talk about that into literature as well. So I think those pieces are going to ensure that we have full implementation, that we have the coaching behind it, and we have leaders that have amazing skill sets to be able to support our teachers, as in addition to the resources themselves.
Yeah, and I was just going to piggyback on that too. I think obviously I can't speak to previous years because I wasn't here, but one of the things that we've really done through this field test is we've learned a lot about what we need in order to help it be successful. And so we've added in those layers. And I think one of the really important pieces that we are trying to really ensure that we have is building in that internal capacity with our internal coaches as well, that they truly are understanding that they can support, and we want to help build them up so that then they can be able to support their teachers better. So I think that's something that is we haven't always done the best job of, but that's something that we've definitely been doing.
Director Hayes.
For clarity, first of all, thank you for your presentation, but is this an extension to 95% or replacement for 95%?
So this would be a replacement for 95, which is our current foundational program. I want to quote Megan in the back, which you can come up as well anytime. She gave such a great compliment to our teachers around the work they've done with 95. She said that the work we've done with 95 has prepared us for CKLA. And I love what they said. They love 95. What they love is that it is an explicit, systematic foundational skills program. That's what we needed. And that's what CKLA is, as well as the knowledge component working together in one curriculum piece.
Okay, the reason I asked is because when we started 95%, that was 3 years before we saw clear results. Now it's been, 2.5 years, and we're bouncing to something else. With that and all the problems that we've had with someone, I'm not sure who it was, mentioned cultural relevance. With the testing that we've had with the students of color, is this something that's going to confuse them, or are we looking to see higher test scores? And from the people that have been a part of the field testing, I would like to hear your ideas. What are you seeing? What the advancements that you're seeing, that this is just not another program?
So I think the difference in the level of understanding needs to be 95% was very teaching to deficit skills. So it's very strong in the phonics and the word recognition that you see on the bottom of the rope that was shared earlier. What CKLA is giving us that we didn't have is the knowledge component, which is all about comprehension. So it's engaging stories, it's real life events. It's teaching them so many concepts that they are not going to get in any other fashion and the curriculum itself is so engaging. The colors, the books, they've done a really nice job of making sure that Boost works really well. And we're not seeing like that connection of some of those struggles that we had when we implemented math. So I think that needs to be something that you guys are aware of as well. So I would say those things I think are going to be relative to all students and seats. And we will see hopefully some progress and some gains with just that exposure in general. Does anybody else want to add anything?
Director Kleindrum?
When Dibbles is testing its accuracy and fluency, is FastBridge the same thing? Okay, so you're saying that we're bringing in the knowledge, the comprehension. Where are we testing that? Because just testing on fluency and accuracy, I will argue that forever and ever, that's not telling us if they're getting the whole picture.
I'm just saying that's what it aligns to. For as far as universal screening, we have A reading. And when inside of CCLA, we have tons and tons of assessments. We're still trying to work out how to use those, but there's a middle year assessment, beginning of the year assessment, end of the year assessment. And we're determining within this field test how that information aligns to A reading. So I'm hearing exactly what you're saying. And we're trying to work out some of that information to then accommodate how we know what they know. I think our first grade teachers and kindergarten teachers can probably answer a little bit more of how you know your kids are learning the knowledge session.
Right. You know, I've never been like with the A reading, they just take it. I mean, it's never been as a first grade teacher, it's hard for me to find that value because it just felt like they did the click through. I feel like now they understand more of what they're going in for with, like I said, I really liked that 95%. And that was like really just that foundations of that word recognition. But with the CKL, you know, it brings in the meaning. Why they have a reason to read now, and they're really connecting it. And with each story, there's a comprehension piece where they're answering questions. They have to go back and find it in the story and then answer the question. And right now, especially with first grade, a lot of it is right there. But it's really getting them to go back into the text and find it. And I'm finding even with my tier 3 kiddos, they are going back and they're smiling because they're noticing the words and they're matching it, and they're getting excited because they can find the sentence to write and they're able to apply it. So I will be giving my mid-year kind of check here toward the end of the week into next week. So I'll feel like I'll get more of where they are for that growth compared to what they did for the beginning of the year.
The writing connection is
Yeah.
also another measure of reading that a teacher could utilize to know to know right now that their students are gaining and getting the information from the knowledge portion. So that's where those comprehension pieces really come to play. For example, last week I had second graders writing a opinion paper, and they were coming up with their own topics, excited to come back the next day, and they're producing a whole piece of writing, not by means in a 5-day process, but an actual teaching component where they're explicitly teaching writing and it's connecting to what they're learning within that knowledge frame. So we really like that too.
I appreciate a couple of you said I was very skeptical going in there, but now I'm not. I appreciate that because sometimes I always feel like the only people we ever hear of are who are all excited from the beginning, and we know that's not true. So I appreciate your honesty on that. It talked about 30 minutes of small group direct instruction, but you said your top kids actually aren't getting that because they are good enough to do independent, or are they still getting direct instruction? And how many groups do you run?
It's definitely a lot different. It's not where I'm teaching whole group and then my 3 small group rotation or 4 small group rotation. Most days I'm teaching whole group and pushing out into small group, which is still kind of majority of my class. And like I said, I have those 5 that might be able to do it independently. Sometimes they still choose to work with us because they like to have that reassurance. But a lot of times they're like, I know this, they want to jump ahead. So instead of holding them back, it gives them that chance to jump ahead. And then a lot of times it'll be like day 1, read with this group, next time read with this group. So I'm getting a chance to actually listen to all my students read. It's not necessarily daily, but it's, on various points. There's pause points built in that allow you to review, kind of play, my class really struggled with the AR and the OR, they were confusing it. I can use this pause point day to review that. And that gives you a lot of different activities to choose from on those pause point days. But then also on those pause point days, there's numerous reading materials that, again, I can choose from and pull to read with different groups. So usually daily, it's my main group. But then, at least I'd say, once, twice a week, I'm still hearing those other kids, or I might partner them up and walk around and listen to them that way. So they're still getting that reading out loud and still getting that check-in with me as a teacher. Does that
So
make sense?
when, on a daily basis, you meet with 3 groups or?
No, that's
Okay.
like what now I'm saying like old school way, but like what I was used to for 20 something years of doing. And now it's the way they have it built in is you're teaching and then there might be a worksheet in the middle of it that ties to that reading. And then you come back again, whole group teaching something. So it's a lot of back, forth, as opposed to here's whole group. Now you guys go do your own thing and I'm gonna go to a small group. It's really, it's a fast pace, but it's really engaging for that hour. Sometimes I almost wish I had more time to work with them on that.
And I think when we think of whole group, we think of just the teacher standing up and like delivering a lecture. It does not look like that. It is constant teacher talk, teachers talk, students talking to students. It's not the model that we're used to. And that was one of our biggest conceptual shifts that we've had to grow together at Fillmore and overcome. But I think we're starting to see how we really did live in a deficit mindset during our core instruction. By having small groups going around the room all day long, I was only ever really servicing that deficit skill for that student for 30 minutes. And what were they doing the other 90 or the other 60 minutes? Nothing productive, because if I'm a struggling reader, I'm not independent. So I should not be left alone to struggle, correct? So what we're seeing is high levels of engagement for all learners. Everyone in every grade level is getting exposure to the same content because they deserve it. And it's grade level content. We're not having 5th graders reading 2nd grade text. We're not having 5th graders learn about 2nd grade concepts because that's where their reading level lies. That was not okay for our students. So now we are giving our students access to core that is at their grade level. And for the students who haven't had it for so long, it's so exciting to see. Their eyes light up like, oh, you mean I can also learn about the same topics as my, better reading ability partners? It's like, yes, you all deserve that. And they're all getting it. On the flip side, though, I will say that we have a really strong need for interventions. That's not going away. We will always have students who are going to struggle. So we still have to really consider about how are we going to meet their needs? We need the time, we need the resources, and we need the people to provide those interventions. I'm just going to put that out there because we can't just ignore that either. So.
Thank you. That was a good plug too for interventionists, by the way.
Director Barnes, feel free to have a seat. There's chairs right at those tables behind. I know we've got you up here for a lot of questions. Director Barnes?
First, thank you for leading change, and thank you all for embracing change. I think what I'm really interested in, though, is how do we take your enthusiasm for this and get some documented results that not only persuade the public that we do better in Davenport schools, but also persuade the rest of the teachers who need to adopt this. So I'm really interested, when are we going to have some persuasive data that says the enthusiasm is leading to the result that we want, so that we have everyone embracing this without skepticism because the data is telling us it? So do we have any idea when we might have that? Because I think that's central to implementation as well as persuading the public that we're doing the right things.
one of the things we have going for us is when you are telling a teacher they're starting new curriculum, they need to know and understand the research behind it. So all the work we've put into letters, and that letters learning provides the kind of foundation for teachers, but I think they do need to understand how the components play out, really be comfortable in planning, and really be comfortable in the support that we're giving. And I heard very clearly from curriculum that within this pilot that we've learned some of the things that we need to do better. And I'm in full support of some of the things they've laid out within their plan. I think we still have a lot of work to do with determining how our tier 3 interventions would go. So that's beyond kind of core. That's where maybe some of those questions lie with teachers as well. Like, if 95% is going away, what is that tier 3 instruction going to look like? And we need to be prepared and have answers for our teachers. And I think that our curriculum council is doing a good job of hearing us say those things and coming out and visiting and actually being in classrooms, knowing what is being shared and what's happening in order to get that message to our teachers. But I do agree with you that message sending out sooner rather than later is always great to get the buy-in and enthusiasm built within our own staffs.
I would love that answer to be today actually, not even tomorrow, because our students, as you've strongly heard, they deserve it. They should have access to this, and that learning is so critical. We know that what we're seeing in our early results of early implementation is that the learning is occurring, that trajectory is going to increase each year from here on out, and that we are watching that very closely and then making pivots. And that's what I'm most proud about the teachers and the partnership and the leadership that's happened in each of the buildings. They reach out with any hesitation if there's a question, if there's a glitch, if there's anything, and then we problem solve together so that we're not waiting for a year. We're not waiting until, the middle of the year reports or the assessments. So as much as I want to say it is happening, we are seeing growth today, and I know we're going to see more tomorrow, and I cannot wait to see what the end of the year results are, and then next year. We know that change takes 3 to 5 years. We're not going to wait for 3 to 5 years. We cannot wait for 3 to 5 years. Our students are in the seats today. We are committed, not only as a department, we're committed to have that partnership with our teachers and our leaders to ensure that trajectory is going in the right direction.
Yeah, I was trying to get Courtney to talk about, well, she shares a lot about their data. So they actually track their students not only on just their nonsense words, like whether or not they read the words, but they track them at 3 different levels. And so that's one of the things that I was going to have her share, because that's something that she has shared with me. So I'll let her do that, and then I will continue.
I just wasn't sure how technical I was going to get. I'm like, blending. Like, are we really going to talk about students blending? Okay. So yeah. So anyhow, real quick, one of our major skills, one of our predetermined to becoming a successful reader is being able to blend 3 CVC, consonant, vowel, consonant word or sounds together to form a word. So we track that, we don't track it for any district data purposes, just because I have one of the best interventionists in the district who chooses to do this, that we're tracking to see what level they're blending. Are they still reading, decoding words sound by sound? Are they able to look at the first sound and then blend the rhyme unit? Are they able to look at a whole CVC word and blend it at the whole level, which means reading it all together? That's the goal. That is the goal of reading, right? Is to be able to look at individual phonemes, sounds, blend them together to create whole words. We are seeing that happen sooner than we've ever seen it. This is my 22nd year at Fillmore. I've been testing a lot of kindergartners in my days and first graders, as well as these wonderful ladies. It's not just by chance. It's not just by accident. It's not just because we had a new group of students coming in. It's because our students are being instructed sooner. They're getting the instruction that they need to become decoders, to become readers at a pace that we haven't experienced before. That's exciting for us. We think about, I can't wait, our kindergarten teachers say every day, I can't wait for your kids to get to first grade next year. I can't wait for you to see what they can do, because you're going to be amazed. So just like, the table spoke earlier, we're not going to see huge system data changes overnight. I mean, that's going to take some time. Like I said, we're still going to need to intervene with some additional supports, but I can't speak loudly enough to say the core has got to be strong. The core has got to be accessible to all students. No more differentiating core. There's a time and place for differentiation, but all of our students deserve 100% solid grade level core.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So you ask a great question about data, right? Because this is not every teacher in the district comes with this level of enthusiasm, as you know. So in in terms of that change management, right? Data speaks for itself. And we're at middle of year, and we've also overcome a lot of implementation hurdles, I would say, in just making these shifts that, oh, I didn't want to make, and it was a little uncomfortable, but I look at my kids every day and they're worth that discomfort, right? So I'm excited for end of year data, but also that plan for, or that implementation or that change management plan has started from the moment the field experience has started. Because the very first conversations that I had with Kristen, Jen, and Bonnie, this wasn't just what's in front of us tomorrow. This was long-term vision for Davenport. And that's something that the leadership work in all of the districts I work with coast to coast, the breakdown is typically at the school building level. Your leaders in this field experience have all risen up to the challenge to say, what are the things that we need to be aware of to support this change district-wide and pull leaders forward. The teachers who are in front of you today are saying, what is it that we need to do to ensure we have an implementation with integrity, to ensure we get the data, to also say, hey, these are going to be some changes. We experienced this. So there are already plans in place for pulling other leaders forward. I think even in March, I'll be back here in March, April, I'll be back. But also too, in how we use these field experience, 50 plus teachers in those initial training opportunities and the work that's going to be done over the summer to ensure that the nerves are calmed from all the other teachers who are not part of this experience, but also giving them a model that, like, yes, you can overcome change. And so I think that the field experience has already began that change management portion.
And I was just going to add to that, we just got through our winter benchmarking, and obviously with all of our data, knowing that we want to give our teachers grace in the fact that they're learning something new, and that takes time too. But one of the things that we did notice that rose to the top there was of our buildings, our 2 full implementation buildings, 5 of our buildings either stayed the same or had growth, and our 2 full implementation buildings were buildings that had growth. And in fact, they were in the top 3. So they were 2 of the 3 buildings that were at the top for growth for their district-wide their building-wide proficiency as well. So I think that is something to be said as well.
Director Potts.
2 quick questions. One, what is the cost of this adoption? And does this curriculum have consumables in it that would constitute an ongoing expense? And what might that be?
Yes, so the amount was in the board memo, and I don't have that in front of me, so I apologize for the exact dollar amount.
Is in where?
Oh, yeah, yes, if you,
I can speak to the consumable side though, but because of the funding that we're using, the consumables would be covered through that. So it's for an 8-year purchase, and so those consumables would already be purchased upfront for that.
and the other part with this amount, it was around $4.1 million. And last year, when we were going through the comprehensive school visits, we did receive a report from the Department of Education that stated that they would pay for 6 of the buildings that are leading into the area for support. So we are anticipating about 1.6 million of those dollars to be coming back from the Department of Education. I have reached out to them, have received the process that they have to go through on their end to be able to release those funds, and they're anticipating late spring when that would occur. So our initial investment will be a little over $4 million, knowing that we will get some reimbursement back from that for CKLA.
Can I just ask you to clarify? Did you say the consumables for 8 years is included in whatever the price is? Okay.
That would be the consumables and the license for like the teachers to continue to have the online access as well.
And I'll look at the board memo. That's where it's at. The exact amount is, and I said 4, is it 3.4? Yeah. 3.4 million.
Yep, I think it's closer to 3.4 than with the state dollars being around 1.8.
Director Poston.
So for those of you that have been around for a longer period of time, when you compare this to the old curriculum, now with the new curriculum, there's the 3-year plan, there's coaching and support, and then of course the materials. Compare that to what was offered when the old curriculum was adopted.
I didn't know if you wanted them to talk to like what they felt the differences were. So I would say that when we adopted Wonders as a building principal, we didn't get this ongoing professional development that you heard us talk to as a 3-year plan. It was always we had a half day in August, here's your resources, and good luck. We also didn't have, CTT processes like we have now where they're able to collaborate on a weekly basis with those resources. And as part of that professional development plan, we did not have the ongoing coaching supports that are in our classrooms working with our teachers that will be continuing as well throughout this. So that would feel very different to me from what they've had.
But the coaching and support are coming from our staff. It isn't coming from
It's actually both.
Both, yeah. So that's what's so exciting when she talked about building that capacity. So Megan and her team have been here so ongoing throughout this process that they're helping to build the capacity in our field test buildings as well as our coaches and our team. And just like we mentioned, Megan and her team will be coming back in April where we will have all building leaderships, principals, coaches, again, starting to understand what those shifts are that we need to engage in before the curriculum, before it starts, helping them understand what you heard them talk about, like whole group and small group. There's some big differences for our teachers, and we want to help them embrace that change before our kids come in front of them in August.
So they will be coming in for 3 years, helping with coaching and support then. Okay. Now on this particular curriculum, of all the curriculums that you're adopting, would you say this is going to have the most effect on reading of all your curriculums?
Yes.
Okay. So how do you determine which curriculum you're going to start with? And I'm just going to back up and go back to HMH into math. And when you presented that, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you presented that, you talked about it was going to be geared more towards reading and problem solving. Okay. So my question is, say you have a child that is really good in math, but that person is a poor reader. Okay. So how do you keep from that child becoming frustrated? He knows the math, but he can't read as well. So, how are you going to get through that?
So you know how we talked about those instructional shifts that we had to help our teachers learn with even Amplify? We talked about those two with HMH into math. And one of those strategies is that 3-read strategy, how to engage in those story problems. So there are lots of good scaffolds built in to help them access that math with the scaffolds in place. these fine ladies teach into math as well, so we could certainly ask them how that's going, but those have been great shifts and scaffolds built in. We know that with any curriculum, it goes hand in hand with instructional practice. And so we're working with teachers on that as well. Just part of Madison's professional development that they had this last in-service day, and was all about those instructional practices that you're asking. What is that 3-read strategy? What does it look like to engage in student discourse? All of that's embedded and into math, but we know those are best practices that we have to pull out instead of just handing them a book to teach it.
So would the teachers like to comment on that?
I think, well, I can speak for all of us when I say that when what works best in how to teach a struggling reader, the strategies that we're using while teaching reading also apply to the strategies we would use for the reading the math problems. Taking it, a lot of our students struggle with multi-step math problems. So just taking it one, just like we would do in reading, we would have one direction first, and then we'd go into the next direction. And then, so it's very much systematic. It's very planned, organized. It allows for the other areas for students to come in and support each other. We do a lot of choral reading, whole group reading, and all of those strategies would definitely fall into any other content area besides reading.
I can add on to that. So as first grade, we're still learning how to read. But I've noticed with, especially the new reading that we've been doing, a lot of your word problems in math contain those sight words or those high frequency words there. Oh, look at that. We know that word. Who can tell me that word? That's the word there. Great job. Okay, let's go into it. And then we reread it, and then we're reading it as a whole class. I'm not just going to, let them struggle and read it independently. You read it together, and then, okay, what are we talking about? Let's talk at our table, talk at your group. Yep, we're talking about dogs and we're talking about cats. Okay, let's read it again. And we go in and we read the story again. Okay, now I heard numbers in there. What do those numbers mean? So those 3 reads are really breaking it down so that they can really understand the process. What are we talking about? What do the numbers mean? And then what question are they asking? So it really kind of connects that way to that math too, I feel. Bert?
Thank you. Just going back to the curriculum department. So how did you determine that you were going to start out with HMH into math versus starting with this curriculum? Was there a reason, why you started one curriculum over the other?
Do you mean reading versus math? And okay. So as part of our adoption process, we have a cycle. Usually curriculums will look at 7-8 year adoptions, and we were overdue for math. We actually should have looked at math pre-COVID. And then when COVID hit, we knew that we couldn't go forward with the field test when we didn't have teachers. That was why it just was due sooner.
Okay. And just one last, when you talked about interventionist, and again, we also got to think about attendance. And so my concern is that, when we're talking about more interventionists, are the interventionists spending a lot of time on students that are absent a lot, and we're trying to catch them up, but the reason they're behind is because they're not in school?
Not necessarily. I mean, we do have a population of students who don't have good attendance. However, we offer that same intervention to all students, whether they're there 100% of the school year or 75% of the school year. The data supports that they need the intervention. So when they're there, we make every effort to make sure that if they miss their morning intervention, that we have an interventionist available to support that need in the afternoon. We meet the kids where we need to meet them. And, it's not always the child's fault that they're not attending school. So we want to make sure that when they're there, they're getting every best minute of the day spent on skills that they need. So I guess I don't say that a majority of our students are in intervention because of their attendance. We just don't have the data to support that alone.
I wanted to add, with work with the interventionists, as Jessica is one of them, we have specifically looked at PAR attendance data, in which we pulled kids specifically that had poor attendance to make sure that we were meeting with them later in the day, to make sure that they had intensifications, communication at home. And so that was work that we did a couple of years ago with the interventionists to know that that's just an important component to think about when we're forming our groups and working with our groups. So they've been great at doing that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? This is why I always go last, because everybody gets my questions answered. I do want to say thank you to Fillmore for coming. My wife and I both went to Fillmore. Miss Rickman, I want to say you've had almost all of my kids. So we've been Fillmore parents for like 18 years on and off. So thank you for everything you do. Miss Rickman, thank you for putting up with my kiddos. I know a couple of them been a pleasure and some not so much. Thank you for coming tonight and giving us some input, because it is nice to hear about the things that actually go on in the building and the classroom. And again, like it was mentioned several times, it was nice to hear that there were some skeptics and things were changed. So is there any other information that board members will need? Because this will probably be coming for us for a vote on the 26th.
I would just like to extend an invite to any of you if you'd like to come and watch it be implemented within a classroom, whatever grade level. We'd be happy to set that up. We can figure that out after here, but we'd be happy to set it up.
We will work with Brenda to get that set up. Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. Before we go to the next one, we're going to take a 5-minute break.
There is just the update on the cost to 3.4 million with 1.8 reimbursement from DE.
All right, we'll move on to what? Oh, I just want to note for the record that Director Barnes had to leave. He had an early morning flight, so he had to get out of here. We will now move on to our second discussion item, subject 12.02 HMH Intro Literature Curriculum. I'll turn it over to Superintendent, who's going to turn it over to someone else.
Okay. All right, here we go. So we're ready, yes, thank you, to proceed with our second presentation around our secondary ELA curriculum resource. And again, just wanted to give thanks to our field test buildings, a couple at the 6th grade level at our elementary buildings, as well as all of our 7, 8, and all of our high schools with 9 through 11. Just definitely, again, thanking them for all their work within the field test and the valuable feedback that they've given. Here is that huge list, like we talked about, of our team members within the adoption process, our teachers within the field test. We have 2 slides of teacher names for you to look at, and we are so honored that they have jumped in and been part of this process with us. In addition, our reading coaches and instructional coaches meet bi-weekly with Kimmy to give that ongoing feedback and support, as well as our high school department heads meet monthly, again, all in service of getting that feedback and next steps that are so important as part of that feedback loop. And so with that, I want to turn it over to Kimmy Woods, our ELA specialist.
All right, so when we think about grades 6 through 11, this is our why. If you take a look at the left, you will see the FAST assessment proficiency data for the fall for the last 5 years. If you take a look at the right, you will see, in addition to this, at the high school level, we have students that are struggling to pass core ELA classes, like English 1 and English 2, which have been occurring for years, as you can see from last year's data. This shows how we have been stagnant for years and our need for a new, rigorous, research-based core curriculum resource. So in 2022, I surveyed the teachers, and one of the things that I asked about the current ELA resource, and does it provide what they need for the teachers and for the students? And all of them pretty much said basically that either they strongly agreed or they strongly, they either agreed or disagreed. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm going to start again. Sorry. In 2022, I surveyed the teachers, and one of the questions that I asked is if the current ELA resource provides what they need to reach all their students. And the majority of them either agreed or disagreed that the resource was not meeting the needs of the students. And they all agreed that there needs to be a new curriculum resource. They were all in support of this. When I asked them what would be some considerations to include for future resources, they included the importance of diverse texts that are engaging, support materials that include both physical and online resources, and a consistent curriculum across all of our high schools. We are excited to share our work towards selecting texts with authors and experiences that reflect our student population. As you take a look at this should look familiar to you. Just like math, ELA also has a growth measure assessment, and this is used as a screener. This chart shows our ELA data for the beginning of the school year with grade level proficiencies depending on the color. So if you take a look at the blue, this is above grade level. If you take a look at the green, this is on grade level. If you take a look at the yellow, this would be below. Orange is 1 to 2 years below, and then red is 2 years below for grade level proficiency. Unfortunately, as we look at the data, it tells us that our current reality is that more than half of our 6th through 10th graders are performing below grade level. And that reinforces the need for both a standards-aligned curriculum resource and high quality instructional practices. And our above grade level students will also benefit from this new curriculum resource with multiple opportunities for reflect and extend work throughout each of the units. So then we talk about our process. And I would love to share with you the timeline as you're looking at all the different photos on the screen. So last spring, we had a vendor fair, and that included over 27 teachers to be able to review the curriculum resources. And they were able to narrow it down to the top 2. And then we had a traveling vendor fair where all teachers were able to view those top 2 resources, and they were able to provide their feedback on that. And we surveyed all the teachers, and they all chose HMH into literature. So then in June, we had a kickoff for our field test where we had Lindsay Edmondson, one of our HMH content specialists. She provided a kickoff, an overview of HMH into literature before the teachers left for summer break. In addition, teachers were also given 10 hours of professional development. We use out of TQ money. And I also was able to do Google Meets with the teachers as well during the summer to provide additional supports. In the fall, we had 2 full days of in-person training with both of our HMH content specialists, Lindsay Edmondson as well as Ryan Bailey. And they were able to provide in-person training to all of our teachers. We currently have monthly building visits that Lindsay and Ryan come and they support those teachers to provide ongoing training support. Our high school teachers have also met with Ryan for half-day training planning sessions, which include virtual trainings and CTT support. At November, December, we had focus groups that were created to get feedback from teachers, and we also surveyed the students as well to get their feedback. We had 242 high school students that were surveyed. We had 598 middle school students, and we had 57 sixth grade students that were surveyed to give their feedback on HMH into literature and how ELA is going overall. And now I will turn it over to Lindsay Edmondson, one of our HMH content specialists, who will present on the program components that we have been field testing for 6 through 11 ELA.
So fancy. Good evening, board and audience. My name is Lindsay Edmondson, and as Kimmy mentioned, I'm one of the content specialists that has been supporting Davenport schools for a minute now. I feel like this has become like my second home in the amount of time that I've spent here with your curriculum team and your teachers. And it truly has been an honor. You saw the list of names of the teachers that we were supporting. Our friend Kimmy here is the most detail-oriented person. To be able to make a schedule that I could get to see all of those people, Ryan and I, in 3 days is a masterwork that I wish I could just copy and paste into my own personal skill set. I am here today to talk about Into Literature and how it is built for today's ELA classroom. You know, what we're hearing from our teachers and our students is that we need a resource that is flexible in a wide variety of ways. I want it to be something that I can access digitally. I also want it to be something that where I need to put paper to pencil, pencil to paper, that I have something physical that I can work within. And so that consumable student edition plus that online resource means that the teacher can take that education where she wants to, and I can really align that curriculum and make it work for me. It is also LMS friendly. It works with a lot of other systems, so it speaks really easily with all of your technology because your students are already on the ED platform working within that K-8 math adoption. So we already even have some familiarity with how to use the resources from that digital perspective. What we want to talk to you today about is what makes Into Literature effective. And there are really 4 key areas that we find really have stood this test of our time with our Into Literature pieces. Starting off with making sure that we have efficacious, proven pedagogy that is also going to engage our students in rigorous content. All of our resources and assessments are aligned to standards so that we can really be reflective on the data and how students are doing in the moment. providing great scaffolded tools for writing and grammar, and then of course providing that professional learning and support for every teacher beyond the work that we have been doing so far in the pilot and as we continue it on through this partnership with HMH. I want you to know that our students in our Into Literature classes are really seeing a blend of some of those great canonical texts that you and I grew up learning about, paired with some really new relevant texts. We've got authors who reflect the students who are sitting in your classrooms, and we continue to create new texts throughout the life of your adoption with us so we make sure that we stay relevant as we go. Because part of the challenge of engaging with middle school and high school students is interest level, and we want to make sure we get great text in their hands. We also want to make sure that we provide opportunities for that flexibility. So our teachers still have great options, great tools to support independent reading, as well as novel studies, all within that great HMH universe and all supported by our great rich program research and resources. You're also going to see that proven pedagogy come right into play within that student edition and how we work and talk about texts with our students. Every text is going to have two main skills that we're going to focus on to really drive our opportunities for engagement and really increase capacity on reading skills. But we're also giving them a tool called our Notice and Note Close Reading signposts that transcend that ELA classroom and can follow them into close reading in any text and any part of their day. It gives our students the language to talk about texts as we dig in. While we're working on our texts and we're building capacity, we're assessing along the ways, and we need to know what standards are being addressed while we're planning. And so at Point of Views within that teacher's edition, while we're planning, all of my Iowa State standards are right there in the margin of my student edition when I am looking online. And they're also available at Point of Views when I'm looking at all of the digital resources that I have. So I can always be having that in front of mind. What are the standards that we're going to be addressing? And then how am I going to use our assessment to really help make sure that we are addressing those standards? So every assessment built onto ED is tied to your Iowa standards, and that is going to give us some really detailed data. How are students doing on our overall unit tests, where we're actually asking them to read a brand new text and apply the standards that we've been working toward, just like they will have to do on, state tests and higher education assessments. The system will pull out for me things like the 4 most frequently missed questions so I can understand, where are the roadblocks here, or what are the 2 most struggling standards on this assessment, so that I can really think about what are some of those next steps that might need to be taken. And I have a full suite of standards-based assessments to help support your middle school students who are doing that standards-based grading. That also helps us understand how we can use the resources Into Literature to support the wide variety of students that we have in our population. We will have our striving readers, those students who may have gaps in their education, but we also know that we have advanced learners, those students who may need to be working above grade level, as well as students who come with a wide variety of language backgrounds. And Into Literature has resources within that teacher's edition to support all of them. Because as you heard earlier, we want students to be working within that core text, and we're going to provide them some scaffolds to help them feel successful. So we take things like adapted texts that still give access to grade level content, but with a way that's a little bit more scaffolded than maybe a traditional text might be. We also lean in heavily to ideas like anchor charts, something that's very familiar with our elementary colleagues, but takes some of these really abstract concepts and makes them visible for our learners so that they have that multiple exposures, as well as taking some of those more challenging topics and creating things like peer coach videos where they can hear it through the voice, through the lens of a peer high school student. In addition to content and activities, we'll also see operations or opportunities for differentiating what that process or learning environment looks like. So even within some of your middle school classrooms, we had the opportunity to see a teacher take some of these lessons and break them down into small group instruction to really maximize those instructional minutes with their students and provide opportunities to continue to push students, those who are high achieving and those students who need a little bit of extra support. We're going to continue that support with some of our online practice pieces. You heard last year about Waggle for math. Waggle also exists for ELA. And so our 6th through 8th grade students have that digital personalized practice that based on their assessment results will help place them on their own personalized path to really help build that grade level capacity around those reading skills. So your 6th through 8th grade students have been working in Waggle and are really starting to find their groove and getting some of those specific skill gaps addressed. But we also know that we have students who are in need of a more intensive intervention system. And that's where we bring in Read 180 for those students who have even more severe needs that really need to be addressed as quickly as possible. These are those students that have made it into 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th grades and still have struggles with phonics and the foundational skills that you heard your teachers talk about at elementary is so key to them building that understanding. So that Read 180 piece for that intensive intervention student is going to take that just right spot where they are currently, even if that is starting with their ABCs and helping them guide on that personal pathway to proficiency in a reasonable amount of time with content and text that was specifically built for middle school and high school students. So they're working on elementary skills, but not doing it through an elementary lens. And so what we were hoping to achieve here is providing a resource for you that supports all of your students. Again, you heard earlier today that we know how important it is to make sure that we have quality, research-based Tier 1 core instruction for every child in your district. Every child deserves that. But for those students who need additional practice, we have these two other opportunities where they can get on their own personal, at their own personalized pace, the skills practice that they need to help reinforce them and help them be more successful in that Tier 1 core instruction. Next, we want to talk about Writable. Writable takes all of the writing activities that we have within Into Literature and places them and much, much more into an online format where we can tighten up the feedback loop. Because the most challenging part of being a high school or middle school English teacher is grading papers. Am I right, folks? There's just so many of them, and I want to read them, but there's just so many of them. And we know we get better at writing by writing, but if I'm the only one providing that feedback, that's a lot of work for me as that classroom teacher. So Writable helps us tighten that up by using a lot of digital tools that are embedded within the writing platform to help provide me ways to give feedback. Blind peer review, easy to use rubrics that are all, again, tied to Iowa standards so that I am really making those connections. And now not do I only have ELA data that I can monitor to look for growth, but I also have data specifically around writing to help me address the issues that my students are coming up against when it is coming to that formal writing opportunity. The last piece that I want to make sure that you know about is that we know that, the resource is as good as the support that comes with it. And we have built in addition to the topics we'll be talking about soon, some digital pieces online that our teachers have access to whenever their first day of instruction might be. Online, we have our Teacher Success Pathway, which is everything that a teacher might need to know to get up and running for those first 30 days of his or her classroom. So it's going to provide on-demand, embedded professional learning for any teacher or student teacher that might be coming into your classrooms and needs to get to know that resource. So a lot of online embedded support to help your teachers get the support when they need that. In addition, we've built a comprehensive professional learning plan for Davenport schools. Did you want to talk a little bit about that, my friend, or you want me to take these bullets? Okay. So one of the things that you have online with our resources, in addition to those first 30 days, is we have a resource called Coachly that provides on-demand independent coaching for each individual teacher. They'll see it on their HMH Ed dashboard. They can schedule a time to talk with a coach that works within their schedule, and they can use it as many times as they want in that first year to get, it's like basically having somebody kind of on call to answer your questions and kind of help you think through next steps. You are going to have 4 in-person coaching days for each campus with some additional built in for Smart and Mid-City to really help support some of those campuses, as well as some additional virtual leadership training and support with Adam Drummond, who has been working with your district already through that math adoption from earlier. So when it comes to supporting your classrooms, we truly believe, and we have seen in your classrooms, that this engagement with this great student resource and the alignment to standards is really helping us to think about our instruction and what next steps need to look like. We provide great digital support to help teachers get what they need to help support their students as writers, and we're here to help support them as learners. Ta-da!
So to wrap up, her ta-da, you can see here were our Into Lit grades 6 through 11 core curricular resources that we have been field testing in our buildings that are part of our new curriculum secondary resources. And at this time, again, I would love to call it, we do have some secondary folks here who have hung with us to almost 8 o'clock. Really appreciate it. Come on up. I owe Corey a Starbucks. I already got a text. We have a lot of late nights this week. Do we want to do the same thing? Would you guys mind introducing yourself and your role in one thing that you are finding success with Into Literature?
My name is Angela Reeves. I'm a North English teacher and department chair, so I kind of am multifaceted when it comes to this curriculum adoption. I guess what I really love about this is kind of the vertical alignment and the fact that for the first time in the almost 9 years I've been in the district, our 4 high schools are very close to each other, and we're doing the same thing at the same time with the same grading practices.
Corey Williams, building principal at West High School. And we're just really dipping our toe into this, and change is very hard for everybody. But Kimmy's been great. She's been coming out and supporting and meeting with our teachers and meeting weekly, monthly, whatever we need, daily if we need to with her. And so the level of support that we're going to have, that our teachers are going to have, like I said, there's a lot to do and it's a lot to take in because it's very overwhelming to learn something new. And then 2 weeks later, you've got the precious angels sitting right in front of you and you have to put this out there in front of them. And there's a lot of technology pieces of it. And so they're trying to navigate and the kids are like, well, you just got to click on here and just do this and just do that. So they're teaching us as we go. So that's humbling to say the least. But again, with the ongoing support that is coming, I think this is going to be the right path. And we're learning as administrators, like they talked about with the elementary level, that there's going to be a lot of ongoing supports for us. So as instructional leaders, we're going to know specifically what we are looking for when we go in. Like I can recognize good instruction, so can Mr. Garnica here, but we need to know specifically what we're doing. And then I have access to all the data and all of the stuff that my teachers are doing in my building, so I can go through and look through everything. So it's just taking the time to be able to play around with it, but we're getting there.
I'm Abby Graves, 6th grade teacher at Buffalo. I think one thing is my students are just engaged this year. Last year, the curriculum was really tough for them. This year, they are reading every day. They are hands-on. The stories are short enough that they're engaging, but still get them that content as well. And there's just a bunch of different resources that they can use, whether it be using their workbook, using the workbook online, Writable, Waggle. There's a bunch of different ways we can go about things too, which is awesome.
I'm Britta Needham. I'm 7th grade language arts at Walcott, and I'm going to say some similar stuff, but one of the most noticeable things for me when implementing this curriculum was just the variety of texts that kids were given. One day we're reading poetry, then we're doing informational text, short stories, we have options of long reads, and it just really keeps our intermediate kids engaged. That wasn't always the case before. A story would take quite a while. And I just really like the Writable and Waggle options and those components that go along with it.
Hi, my name is Mike Garnick. I'm the principal at Walcott. I think I bring a unique perspective to this because I have the K-8 kids in my building. And a lot of the great strategies and things that are going on in the elementary are now with HMH carried up to the 7th and 8th grade classrooms. Like Ms. Needham mentioned previously, the kids and the teachers were not excited, quite honestly, with Unbound Ed. And now they are. They're digging in. The kids are excited to be in there. Part of that is the support that we're getting from HMH. Lindsay has been in the building multiple times this year with Kim, providing support. We've been in Britta's classroom multiple times together. We've been in my other language arts teachers' classrooms multiple times together. But then at the end of the visit, we always sit down and we debrief. There's plenty of time for questions. And then from there, Lindsay, if she doesn't know the answers, which 99% of the time she does, she'll get back to us right away. And that could be in regards to Waggle or Writable. But then another piece that I'm super excited about, and this also goes with us implementing the middle school model, is my junior high teachers have 80 minutes. So I could walk in at the beginning and see a whole group lesson, and then they transition. And from there, HMH has provided materials, assessments, so that Britta and the other teachers can arrange kids based on where they need help with certain standards and things like that. So Britta could pull a group of 3 to 5 kids up to a kidney table at the middle school level. And then when Mr. Phillips, our asset manager, emailed out about kidney tables, my middle school teachers want kidney tables, because now that is just part of how we do business, not only in the language arts classrooms, but also in the math classrooms. So just a lot of excitement about the HMH materials, and where we go from here was only positive in my opinion.
Director Beck.
I have 2 questions. First of all, thank you guys for sticking it out here. The first one is, it's a field test, but we've got like all of the middle schools and all of the high schools. How does that work? How is it a field test?
I can't wait to answer that. So, and you, such a good listener.
I am.
So yes, right? Like usually field tests, our goal is to do at such a small scale that we can work out all the coaches and sustain this, right? All the things. They pushed for this. They wanted this, all of them. And I am so proud of them for that. And we're willing to all jump in. And that hasn't come without challenges, right? Because you heard him say Kimmy. There's one Kimmy. And you're right, she's a master scheduler, because we've said we can't leave one teacher out at any one place. And so, but that really was their voice and choice to get it sooner, because like Angela said beautifully, they needed it. So, yeah.
Okay. So I guess I lied. I have 3 questions. So a follow-up to that. How does this compare to trying to catch students up last year? Because, right, when we're looking at secondary, we're looking at students who, if they haven't had good instruction before, now they're behind grade level. And there was a lot of learning loss for all of these kids during the pandemic. So no matter who they are, we're doing some catch up. But last year, you were trying to catch them up with whatever curriculum we had, and now trying to catch them up with this curriculum. So I guess my question is to the people who are using it, how does this compare? Has it been easier to get that motivation, easier to get those kids in the classroom, harder? What are some things that you've noticed?
I don't really know how to answer. I guess being English 1, English 2 at the high school level, if you've struggled to be successful in English 1 and English 2 in the past, you're retaking essentially the course until you pass it, because it's a graduation requirement. I would say that for our English 1 curriculum, it is much more engaging, much more relevant, much more diverse, with that nonfiction basics that kind of leads itself more to the ISAS and to the ACT that we didn't have in the past. With our English 2, it has been a little bit more of a struggle, because we decided to keep that American literature focus in the English 2 that we had in the past. We have learned through this field test that American literature curriculum, which is built for juniors, isn't as successful with our current 10th graders. And so through this field test, we've kind of realized that, and we're working towards changing that and kind of switching up how we're doing this for next year. So especially because this is now 3rd term, and so this is our 2nd full time through this whole material, we've identified where we as teachers have struggled with this material and how to adapt it and how to make it fit with those struggling learners in a much more diverse way than we did in the past.
What we've also been able to do is, instead of just having a couple of days in the summer and just present something new, is we have, and it was very difficult committing our entire language arts department that teaches this to a day during the school day to come up here for a day and train. So they, like, the morning was for English 1 and the afternoon was for English 2. And we struggle with subs on a good day. So this was really a challenge and a commitment. But we are challenging ourselves and stretching our thinking and then committing to this because this is going to pay off. Again, right now, it's change is hard. It's just really difficult and really hard. And we have kids that come to us as ninth graders that can't read or that are reading on a third or fourth grade level. And so it's exciting to hear the elementaries talk about this and how excited they are. And so I cannot wait to see the fruits of that labor once they get to upper middle school grades and once they come to us. Because again, we haven't had a lot of resources or had a lot of things to do. It's just, oh, you failed it, now you got to retake it. So hopefully that pattern that we've had no other choice in the Davenport schools, that's going to hopefully cease a little bit here, and we're going to definitely see the benefits of this for sure.
This is my second year teaching, so I haven't seen a ton of change since I didn't start till post-COVID. But one thing for me, it's easier just to be able to interact with my kids and see their writing and give them feedback. Because what we were doing last year was like, you write a paper, but now when they're unwritable, I'm able to give them that feedback and they can do that peer feedback. So I think that's a lot easier as a big start, because I know writing is a huge struggle for these kids.
I would say too, a big difference with this curriculum is that I just feel, you mentioned like, how is it different? How are we catching the kids up? I feel like the curriculum we did previously was quite slow. We got through things at a much slower pace. We maybe focused in on like one maybe specific area, where I'm just always impressed with every unit, every lesson, and how it's just multi-layered. I think when we are discovering a text, all of a sudden they embedded grammar like really well. They embedded vocabulary really well. We have writing way more frequently than we did before, where with the last curriculum, I feel we focused on writing for like maybe an entire month, and we just did that, where there's many more opportunities for writing. We're doing it daily and writable, but then every unit at the end has a specific writing project. And so I think the teachers and I are even impressed, my co-teachers, with like, oh, that's cool. They're discussing this grammar as well as this vocabulary, and we're just hitting so many more topics. And I just feel like our kids' attention span is so quick, and this curriculum meets that really, really well. We're moving fast, but they can handle it, and it's just keeping them engaged.
And kind of piggybacking on what Ms. Needham just said, we have those assignments and the assessments that are occurring frequently, and then they're electronic, so we're getting the feedback right away, and we know which kids are doing well on which standards, and then how to group them so that they have tier 2 time in the classroom.
That is actually a wonderful segue into my next question. So I always put this in my syllabus. There's a lot of research that shows that we comprehend more when we're reading on paper versus on a screen. So how do these resources support print reading versus scanning on a screen, which is what happens? If you guys don't want to answer, somebody else can answer.
I would say that the teachers at Walcott, we really appreciate the workbook and the consumables. Of course, we know kids are on screens a lot, and we're actually kind of, we've swung the pendulum the opposite way, where we're putting away Chromebooks more often than ever, especially because they're getting their waggle minutes, they're getting enough screen time. What I really like about this program is I'm constantly having my kids in the workbook more than I am on the online version. However, what's really nice is we can project the student version up on the screen. So I notice some kids prefer that while others prefer the book. It highlights as we go through the text. I reread every day last year the same text, so this is a nice break. And it highlights, we have the option to have it highlight. There's, what do I want to say? It reads it for us when I'm missing the word, but so it's really nice that I feel kids are getting the option, but I totally agree. I feel like they're much more engaged with the workbook, and I'm so glad we have it, for sure.
When my kids are doing the tests and have to go back to the text, it's like the text is on one side and the test is on the other. So we've kind of gone in different directions of if they've taken the test solely on paper, if they've done it online. And I, for the last 2 tests, had them take it on paper, which forces them to use the physical workbook in front of them, but then put the answers online, which it's not too difficult for them. It's a few multiple choice questions and one short answer. But that allows us to look at the data. But also I tell them, I'm like, I can't trust that you're actually using your workbook, but this having it out, it forces me to see that you're using it. So I do think that helps them to go back, and it has both those options, which is really nice.
Director Klein Jerome.
In the high school, is this used for classes that are just strictly writing?
Into literature is used in our core English 1 and English 2 courses, which are reading and literature based. So it's both. So you're reading and you're writing about what you're reading about, or you're writing about what the core focus is of the unit. There's an essential question that goes with each unit. And so your writings goes with that essential question, and then your readings are also focused on that essential question.
Are they still required to do a research paper?
Yes, they are actually writing more with this curriculum. In previous English 1 classes, we were writing once a term, 1 essay a term in English 1 for both terms, so 2 total essays. Where now we're doing 2 units within each term, and there's a writing response, there's a writing essay, and a unit test where they're required to write in each unit. So they're writing 2 full out papers, whether they be informative or argumentative, in each term. So 4 total across English 1, 4 across English 2.
So just English 1 and 2 are using this new curriculum?
Correct. We are going next year to offer an English 3. That's the field test of the English 3 will happen next year. But because of how the high school courses are set up, it doesn't. We utilize Writable, my writing classes. So the written communication, the advanced writing classes that are standalone writing classes can push into Writable and can utilize those resources as the classroom teacher, or you can have your assignments like put into Writable, but it's not across the board that we all do that.
So what will English 3 take the place of? Because they still are taking written communications, the literature classes. I mean, who's going into English 3? The struggling kids?
Well, next year it's an option that they were offered to take. Kim can talk about what it's replacing.
Yeah, so HMH 11 will be for English 3, and we currently don't have English 3 right now.
Correct.
So we're adding that in, and we will have the curricular resource with HMH to support that. So typically, like the traditional student would take English 1, English 2, and then they would take English 3. And then they would go on to take an elective and then written communication.
Okay, so I'm an honor student. Would I have to take English 3
You
or?
would not.
Okay,
No.
there's other
So you
options
could-
that I can opt out of.
Absolutely. You could go to the AP track. So you could take AP Lit, you could take AP Lang, or you could take Comp 1, Comp 2. So you don't have to take English 3 if you're going to do like the honors track.
So in 6 years, if Amplify does its job, we really aren't going to need this intensive reading in middle school and high school, correct? Would that be the assumption? I mean, isn't Amplify going to cure everything, and so we get to the middle school, we can go back to, real literature and writing?
This is real literature and writing, so this provides the consistency. Again, it's the curriculum resource itself, and we would continue to use a high quality instructional materials.
Well, but I mean, when you get into Waggle and some of those things, that's really
Waggle and Read 180, correct.
more of an intensive, I need some help versus, yeah,
Yes,
the Amplify would take care of. Hopefully by the time they get there, they are beyond that.
Yeah, Waggle is the tier 2, and Read 180 is the tier 3 portion of the HMH into literature.
So we're hoping
we would
don't
anticipate
really
that the numbers
need
would go down.
The English 1, English 2 grades in D's and F's. Have you looked into, is it because I taught English 1 and 2. I taught the writing classes. I get all this. I had kids that just wouldn't do that research paper, and that's the whole second term or the fourth term, and you're going to flunk if you don't do that one paper. Is that a big part of why we are giving so many D's and F's? Well, we're not giving it. It's what they're getting because of that.
I would say historically, yes. The reason why students ended up having to repeat English 1 or English 2, especially that term 2, that term 4, like you discussed, is because they refused to do the argumentative research paper, right? You have a lot of that. Because we're writing twice, there's 2 unit essays in each term. So you're not going to fail because of one essay. You've already had a chance to show that you've met the standards with that first essay. So as long as you've met the standard with that first essay, then I would feel confident that if you've shown progress on the second essay, then you've mastered the skills for me to feel comfortable as the classroom teacher passing you, because you've mastered the standards. You've done the skill set that I wanted you to do. We're still working out. That was kind of a topic of conversation that North had last week of, we're doing 2 units a term, but I've looked at those priority standards and I've been assessed 3 times on those priority standards in that first unit. So then what is kind of the purpose of that second unit? So we're still working out what that looks like.
And Romeo and Juliet, in or out?
Romeo and Juliet is still in the English 1 curriculum. North has a section that's field testing, eliminating the Odyssey and replacing it with something else. But Romeo and Juliet is still in.
Director Potts.
Are we still having honors English in 7th and 8th grades?
Yes.
Okay. Does that mean that Anne Frank is still good?
Yes, it's actually in HMH into literature for grade 8. Yes.
How does this curriculum impact, or is this curriculum going to be used in the honors classes, or is that a separate curriculum or separate course?
No, it will be used for the honors as well. There is so much with HMH into literature. There's like extensions, there's novels that can be put in. So this is going to be for all, and then obviously we'll differentiate for honors and regular.
Britta teaches honors. I don't know. I don't want to put her on the spot, but if she wanted to talk to that, she's done both.
Well, I really don't know a lot different because I teach mostly honors classes. I will say I work really closely with, what's that? Well, yeah, it's my dream year. Okay, so, but I would say I work really closely. I have 2 tag teachers that I work with really closely, and we just love the options of additional reads. So I feel like we go through the curriculum quite quickly. Again, I feel like it's at a pace that they can definitely handle. But then they provide you at the end of the unit with a large writing task, which has been really nice. And then they give you options for long and short reads. And so it kind of feels a little nostalgic in a way, like we're teaching a novel like we did old school. We're kind of having those discussions as a class, and kids cannot wait now until every new quarter. And they're like, are we going to do another novel? What are we going to read? And they just love it. We just kind of like dive in for a couple weeks and, just enjoy the novel together. So it's really nice that there's options there and there's time for it too.
Any other questions? I just wanted something for clarification. When it was being presented, it said all of the campuses will have four days, and then Smart and Mid-City will have 8 additional days. So does that mean that those 2 schools will get 12 days total or 8 total?
Thanks, you're going to find it for me. So we modeled that off of what we've been doing with our Into Math by giving them additional days. So instead of like one coaching session each quarter, those buildings would get like 3 days in a row or 2 days and then 1 week follow up for another. And so it is 8 additional days, so 12 in total. How they've done that with math is like 4, 4, 4.
Okay. And then what is a coachly subscription for each campus? So that's a separate charge for each campus?
No, that would be included in the total professional development plan. And coachly subscriptions are less. So how it was described to me are your administrator, your coaches, your department heads in a building would have access to that coachly subscription to help our teachers within CTT. It's like an on-demand expert that can give them answers and resources immediately. Where if Lindsay maybe couldn't respond as quickly, or maybe it's another month until that coach is on site, that's what Coachly provides. And that's new from HMH that was added and included as part of our PD plan. So we're still learning about that great resource as well.
Okay. Thank you all for hanging around so late. Thank you all for, I think it was kind of weird that you had 2 competitors present one right after the other, but hey, it'll get the prices right. So we appreciate that. Is there any other information? Oh.
So my name's Dave Van Gorp. I'm the account executive for HMH, and I just want to let you know this is my 31st year of education, 14 as a teacher principal, and now 17 with HMH. And I was here a year ago for Into Math, and have been back numerous times for a variety of things. But I just know that sometimes when you're in the trenches in a district like Davenport, it's hard. And I just want to let you know that you have tremendous leadership and teachers. They are so kid-centered and they care deeply. And so I just wanted to take the opportunity, again, the board, you come and so often you hear so much information, but please know, from TJ to Diane and all the way down, you have tremendous people in your district. And what I am so proud about is that I get the opportunity to partner. And I get the opportunity to have deep conversations with people and try to figure out where are we, how did we get here, and what are things that are quick changes, and what are some things that are just systematically hard. And then you put a plan in place and you constantly go back and you revisit that plan and you ask hard questions. Is it working? If it's not working, is it a curricular issue? Is it an implementation issue? Is it a classroom management issue? Is it a student issue? Where does the issue lie? And then what's the plan to move forward? And so I just wanted to take the opportunity, and I know it got asked, and so it's only fair. This 611 adoption is $47,000 over $3 million. All right, so $3,047,000 and some change, and it's an 8-year subscription. And so when these folks are talking about that their students are in the workbook per se, it is a soft cover student edition. Okay, so if you can remember the old fat English 2 book that weighed about 64.5 pounds, all right, and you always said, don't write in it, because you knew if they wrote in it, then what do you do next year? So this is a soft cover work text. It's very intentional. We want kids to engage in the literature, circle, write, highlight, blah, 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 and then every year that quantity is sent at no charge, okay, because it's an 8-year subscription, and then the 8-year print subscription. One other thing, Dr. Beck, you had asked about, I think what you were asking at that middle school level is how do you continue to get grade level content for kiddos that are reading below? And one of the things that we love about IntelliLit is every written word in the student consumable text is available to them to be read to them, which is critical because we know that listening comprehension is roughly 2 years higher than their ability to read. And so, yes, we want them engaged in those things, but we also know that we have to tap into our technology resources as well. All right, so I just wanted to take that opportunity, and we're excited to partner with you. We're partnering with you with the K-8. You approved the science in December for 9-12, and so we're excited that it's going to be single sign-on opportunities for kids. And the last thing I will say is Writable. Writable is not just for ELA. And so and a subscription is a subscription. So in your U.S. history classes, they can use Writable. They can do some really amazing cross-curricular things within Writable that these folks are going to be teaching the kids how to utilize. Your other departments have free access to those tools. So thanks for the, yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much for that. We do have some incredible, amazing staff here, and we would like to keep them. Is there any other information that board members would need to go ahead and vote on this at the meeting on the 26th? All right, thank you again very much for the presentation. We will move on to subject 12.03, IMEG contract for Truman Drainage and Facade Project and Playground Design. I'll turn it over to Superintendent.
As a part of our long-range facility plan, it is time for us to address the ongoing concerns that are around the outside of Truman. So Jesse's here today to kind of talk us through this project and answer any questions that we have.
As TJ said, the original project was started in 2021, and then due to our financial situation and then trying to develop the long-range facility plan, it was postponed. This project includes fixing the drainage problem at Truman Elementary. The original drainage does not work at the current time, and then due to it not working, a lot of the sidewalk is disformed, and that would be replaced, and then the facade part of it would hide the drainage that would be installed, and then the playground part, we had rushing construction evaluate all of our playgrounds, and Truman was deemed the worst. So we wanted to replace that while we were doing work as well.
Director Klein-Jerome.
First of all, could you explain to me what is composite paneling that's going on the outside of a brick building?
Yeah, so it's basically siding, essentially. If you think of like mid-city almost, that's kind of what it looks like, somewhat. But
so it will change the appearance? I mean, it's not
just where the concrete aspect of Truman is, it'd go over the concrete aspect of it.
Okay. And then my next question is, so we are paying 100% of the playground equipment, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, then my question, and I'm gonna direct this to the superintendent. I went to a fundraiser Friday night where they were raising funds for one of our elementaries to get a new playground. Now, why are we having some PTAs raise their funds and others were just providing the whole thing?
So part of our strategic plan is that we have a district standard. So this is the playground that we provide. Many times PTAs can fundraise to go above and beyond what the district provides. One of the practices that we've got to get away from is asking our taxpayers to fundraise for things that we should be budgeting for. And so now we still need to be creative to look for grants to extend our dollars farther to get our district standard where it needs to be. So we need to continue to fundraise and look for those things, but we want to be very careful. This is very similar to fundraising for weights. We don't fundraise for weights. We provide the weights to our weight rooms. If you want to fundraise to provide laptops or tablets inside the weight room for your students, because that's above and beyond what we say we're going to provide. So I'll connect with you offline what that building is, but that's how we're moving forward. So when you see projects like this coming forward, that's how we're going about it. We may go after grants, we may go after SCRA, things like that, to help us make our dollars go farther, which is a great practice. But one of the things that we want to avoid is that. asking our taxpayers to provide our district standard for us. So.
Director Beck?
Along those same lines, just to clarify, if you go over to say like Eisenhower right now, there's 2 playgrounds, right? There's like a brand new one and then 2 structures that are older. If a group wanted to raise money to add a second play structure or something like that, that's okay. It's just we have a certain standard that we are going to. And
Yeah,
then
that's what I said. Yeah.
okay, with the ground, like I noticed, like Truman has the rubberized, but a lot of our playgrounds have just mulch. How do we decide which one goes where? Is that like a construction issue or?
Yeah, that would be a construction issue, and we kind of leave it up to building admins in some ways, but.
Director Poston?
So I want to make sure I'm clear on this. The total project is $1 million.
For just Truman, and then the other so 1 million out of save for the Truman drainage, and then 220,000 is what we've allotted per playground out of Pebble, but that's the total price for it's kind of separate.
Okay.
Project.
So it's going to take $1 million to do the drainage.
But yes.
Okay. So what's happening there that we have to spend this much money for drainage? What's going on?
So the old French drainage system, it does not work anymore. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put PVC drainage on the building, and then the composite paneling will hide that. And then we're going to bore new drainage lines to disperse properly. And then a lot of the cost comes in replacing asphalt because we have to go underneath the asphalt, and then a lot of the sidewalk.
So is this going to a retention area, or where is this draining to?
The city says we do not need a retention pond at this time, at least in when this project was first started.
So where is it going?
I don't know specifically where it's going, but I assume it's going downhill.
I mean, it's got to go either straight street or storm sewer, or.
I think it's I don't have the correct answer right now, but I can look it into.
Is there a creek running behind?
Yes, there is. Okay. Yeah, and to piggyback on that, this if you walk around Truman, the sidewalks they're really bad because of the water that's running off, the heaving, the freezing. It's really unsafe. And if we don't address this issue, it will begin to erode away at the foundation of the building. Willie, you were probably there the most recent. Accurate?
So will quite a bit of the sidewalk have to be replaced then?
Yeah, most of it. Yeah.
Is there any other questions or information that board members need to feel comfortable moving on with this on the 26th? All right, thank you very much. All right, our next subject is 12.04, the 2024-2025 academic calendar. Turn it over to the superintendent.
Hi, everybody. A lot of this information was included in the Friday report as well, but there's a copy of the proposed academic calendar for next school year linked. As you look that over and think about your questions, please note as well that the legislature is still looking at allowing us to move the start date up. I believe there's one proposal stating that we could start it on the first day of the current week that we're on. So the 23rd is where we're planning to start. It would be the Monday. There's another one stating that we would be allowed to start the school year on the Tuesday after the state fair. So if either of those come to fruition, we will be proposing another academic calendar that's adjusted accordingly. But you'll notice on this calendar, there are a couple small tweaks. The first one is that there is no fall break listed on this calendar. There is no spring break number 2 listed on this calendar. Those days were repurposed at different times during the year. We are planning to maintain the traditional school day on Wednesdays with a PD day once a month. Those are noted in yellow. The 2 months that would not have PD days would be November and December. So just a point of reference there. And lastly, I would like to just state that the school year is still scheduled to be done before June strikes, which was of importance to a lot of folks. So I said that was the last piece. I lied. The one last piece that I would like to have as a last piece before I think of another last piece is that the secondary teachers wanted to have terms ending on Fridays. That we were able to accomplish that in all but one term on this calendar. So Nicole Stroop has gone through probably 5 or 6 different iterations of this document, has done a really, really good job of putting time and effort. You'll see that it does meet. We're above the 1080 hours that are that we agreed to last week, last board meeting. So just wanted to highlight that, and any questions you have, I'd be more than willing to answer.
Director Poston.
So you've got 4 Friday early out days. Those are the end of the quarters.
Some of those are the end of the quarters. You'll note that the dates, though, that are in red are 2-hour early outs, and those are that is teacher time. That does 2 different things. Number one, that allows us to meet our contractual obligation to the DEA, provide time for professional development plans and other things. It also is in the spirit of what Superintendent Schneckloth asked for last year, and that's just time for our teachers to be able to plan without any time being used by buildings or district.
And we need that in addition to the Mondays that we're having professional development.
Correct. Those hours in the past, when we had the Wednesday, there was always one Wednesday a month that was set aside for teacher professional development planning.
And that is part of the DEA's contract. It's in the contract. It's in the DEA's contract.
Okay. All right. Well, I realize it's in the contract, but I've never been a fan of 2-hour early outs. I think it just disrupts the whole day, and you've got these kids on the bus in the morning, and then it's almost like you're turning around and you're hauling them back home again. But
Director Beck.
Along those lines, I appreciate the fact that we're trying to put those on Fridays. It makes a lot of sense to me in terms of planning. It's like at least a parent can say it's going to be a long weekend, right? I guess my one thing that's bothered me always is the fact that the second quarter is split by a long winter break, and the students come back and they have like a week, and then they have their final exams. And I know under the current structure, it's not possible to avoid that, but just something to think about. Like, I've had to teach on that type of system before, and you spend so much time, I feel like, reteaching to catch up. Of course, it's up to the teachers what they want. And I see that's the one spot where you guys had to start the semester the next quarter on the next day. So something to think about if we get our earlier start date.
Director Klein-Jerome.
And I don't have to live with this calendar because I'm not following it, but the March, having spring break for a week and then coming back for 4 days, and in high school, that's finals, that kind of goes along with the same thing. If there's any way that this 17th week could be flipped and they end this quarter term before they go on spring break. Oh, when I taught in high school, that made more sense than come back for 4 days, 2 of which are finals days. And again, I'm not the one living with this, but November is very choppy. You know, you have 1 week that's a full week. Otherwise, there's 2 days off, and then you got Veterans Day off, and then you got 1 week, and then you got Thanksgiving off. It just, not a lot of days off.
Director Potts.
I've always wished we could have spring break when it was warm. Because you have spring break in March and you can't get anything done outside. So put that on your list, John. Also, we're not making any accommodations for Good Friday and the Monday after Easter. Is that correct?
That's correct.
It's too much like spring. I'm sure we could come up with another euphemism, like winter break.
Is there any other input from the board? All right. We will move on to subject 12.05, policies for board discussion. I'll turn it over to Director Klein-Jerome.
Let's see. Most of these are just reviews. There were not a lot of changes. Sometimes just titles, replacements. Are there any questions about these? Okay, they will come back again.
Thank you. Are there any administrative reports? Are there any board requests? I got two. First board request, name of board member, Director Klein-Jerome. Date of request 2/12/2024. Item requested, a request for information. Description of request, provide the board a fine arts calendar. Why are you making this request? There are many fine arts activities, plays, musicals, etc. that we are not aware of. It would be nice if we would know about these activities so we could attend these activities. When would you like this? ASAP.
Second.
Second board request, name of board member making the request, Director Gosa. Date of request 2/12/2024. Item requested, an agenda item. Description of request, I would like the district to look into the feasibility of having single access points in our building, as well as installing equipment such as metal detectors and or other technologies to enhance safety. Why are you making this request? With the things that are occurring around the country, I feel we need to be proactive. When would you like this? ASAP. Is there a second?
Second. Oh, can't got it.
All right, are there any other board requests? All right, seeing none. Board reflections. Start with Director Beck.
I want to say I super appreciate having teachers and administrators come speak about curriculum that they've been piloting. And so it makes it, I feel a whole lot more confident voting on that money, hearing the people that have actually used it.
Thank you, Director Beck. Director Poston.
I appreciate the young man that's going to take TJ's place, so keep him on his toes.
Thank you, Director Poston. Director Hayes.
I appreciate Director Potts pointing out the AEA information. We normally use them, and I think it was just kind of an oversight maybe that it was put there as rather than discussing it first. And I appreciate him for calling that to our attention.
Thank you, Director Hayes. Director Potts.
I think two things. One, I think our two curriculum presentations were very important. The first one, the elementary one, never let the elementary go first. They talk way too long. Okay? But it has the greatest potential for making an impact. We also need to, this is pricey stuff. This is pricey stuff, 7 million or so for the two curriculums. We could almost build a school for that, but we're not in the business of building. Oh yeah, we are. Second, the second biggest thing we did was setting the bond things, because that, in my mind, closes a chapter on our long-range facility planning, and now will allow us to move to the next phase in our long-range facility planning.
Thank you, Director Potts. Director Klein Jerome.
I also appreciated the discussion about the curriculum, and I think the teachers, usually they parade up people who are just going to tell you all the great things. And to say, I was skeptical, meant a lot to me, that you aren't just showing me the people who are going to say yes, yes, yes. And I'm hoping that really it does its job so that as kids get into middle school and high school, they aren't struggling, and that we have given them a very strong foundation.
Thank you, Director Klein Jerome. Superintendent Schneckloff.
And the same as everyone else, I'm really excited about to watch these tools get in the hands of our educators. I think it's going to make a huge difference. When I see these lessons being taught in the buildings right now, they're very rigorous, and our students need and deserve it.
Thank you, Superintendent. I'm just going to say ditto to everybody else, and with that, Director Potts, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes have it, motion carries, meeting adjourned.